Princess Urenica of Livovny, who was taken hostage by the large nation of Belcourt, waits with bated breath for Urdian, the king of Belcourt. The king came and said, Princess Urenica dashes towards him. After reaching, she excitedly said, I've been waiting for you, and then she calls, De Kalb's dad. The king looks her for a moment and then asks, Who's what? Regretting what she said, Oops, why'd I say that? Stupid mouth, stupid mouth. Observing that the king doesn't look angry, she chuckles and said, I mean, your majesty, would you marry me? The king was in disbelief hearing that. He said, Princess. She was sniffling and had her hopes high. She replied, Yes. The king responds, I did not abduct you to marry you. I know that. She replies. He asks, Then why did you ask? Why? She glances at him. Because, she blushes and said, I'm totally in love with you, your majesty. From the moment I first saw you. The king declined. No, I don't love you, princess. And more importantly, you know I am engaged. Laughing it off, she said. But you said she wasn't your fiancé, he responded. Well, true. I suppose it's more like she is a future candidate to become my fiancé. Hearing that, Urenica thinks in her mind. See? I know that. Who do you think you're fooling? She then said. Yes. I suppose there's no knowing what the future brings. However, do you love Lady Elodia, your majesty? She inquires. He admits. I can't really say that I do. She asked. Then why won't you give me a chance? He glances at her and asked, Is there a reason that I should? She replied. Because I like you. He added. I don't know if that's true. Shocked from his reply, Urenica thinks. I said I like you? I even said I love you. What other reason do you need? She explained. If you marry me, you'll gain a lot more than if you married Lady Elodia. He asked, for example. She replied. I hold the title for the western region of Livovny, the breadbasket of our country. I'm sure you know of that region's reputation as land blessed by the goddess. He countered. Belcourt also has plenty of fertile lands, she continued. Anne, as the much-beloved youngest princess, my father will give you a handsome dowry, so much that you'll be unable to refuse. He countered again. Is a princess of Livovny actually concerned about the state coffers of Belcourt? She added. If you marry me, my father will immediately open up Gluckman Road. He again countered. Gluckman Road? I have a feeling he'll open the road soon, even if I don't marry you. Urenica felt defeated and despair. She thinks in her mind. It's moments like this that make me feel sad my country is small. If only he knew why I was doing this. He'd accept my proposal on the spot. So frustrating. I'm trying to save you here. If you marry Lady Elodia, a horrible villain will be born. That woman will raise your son to follow the evil path of dark magic. And as the father of the villain, you'll be murdered by your own son when you turn 40. Clenching her fists, she thinks. But if I say that, he'll either interrogate me to find out how I knew those things, or he'll think I'm insane. I really didn't want to have to do this, but... Resolving herself, she quickly turns and asks, Don't you think I'm pretty? He immediately answered, I don't know. I'm not sure. Hearing that in disbelief, Urenica wonders. What? The king chuckles and said, I've never seen a proposal like this, so it's refreshing. But I wish you'd understand that I have no intention of marrying you, princess. I'm not the type to get married if there's no love. He shrugs, hearing that Urenica was fuming and in shock. Dude, you just said you don't love Lady Elodia, he added. And now, I want to try loving her the best I can. What? She exclaims, he said. I'll return you to Livovny as soon as the king opens access to Gluckman Road. Good day. As soon as he said that, he turns and walks away. After he left, Urenica was standing there trembling with anger. She thinks in her mind, Put up all the walls you want, but I won't give up so easily. There's a reason why I'm trying so hard to make the king of Belcourt marry me. I was actually transported to the world of a web novel I was reading, specifically 20 years before the main story takes place. I'm trying to stop the birth of the novel's villain and the tragedy that's about to befall the characters. At the same time, I'm trying to save myself from my own character's fate of dying within 5 years after her body reacts badly to magic. The only person who can save me is King Eurydion, but he totally rejected me. My desperate attempts to save the both of us from becoming tragic supporting characters begin with the villain's father turning me down with no hesitation. Urenica asks, What are you going to name her, Teresa? Duke Levon already has a name, I bet. What did he say? Teresa thinks for a moment, and then replied, Bridget! Hearing that, Urenica coughs. She said, Bridget? That's a pretty name. While blushing, Teresa asks, doesn't it sound like a good name? Urenica replied, totally. It's cute. She concludes, Bridget. That confirmed everything. I was in the world of Bridget Wants to Be Happy, a web novel I was reading in my world before I died. And right now, Teresa is carrying the protagonist of that web novel. She tells, I first woke up in this body about 8 months ago. When I opened my eyes, I had skin as white as snow, fluffy light pink hair like sweet cotton candy, and clear, pale blue eyes. I was a total beauty. So pretty. Looking in the mirror, she asks, is this really me? As she spoke, she realized, was I just talking in a strange language? As she was wondering, Teresa came barging. She asked, Urenica, are you okay? Urenica got blinded by Teresa's beauty. The maids asked, Your Highness, did something happen? Urenica was shocked after hearing, Your Highness? Because she didn't realize yet who she was. Teresa asks, I heard you scream. You scared me. Are you sick or something? Come on, Yenny. Don't look at me like a stranger. Urenica was still in shock. What? That's when she met her so-called sister. She wonders, looking at maids. Are those maid costumes? Teresa asks, Really, what happened? She replied, Nothing. She wonders seriously. What the heck is happening right now? Then she asked, But who are you? And where am I? Teresa and all the maids were shocked after hearing that. Bakiuste thinks that Urenica lost her memory. The room was in chaos. One of the maids shouted, Get the king! No, the royal physician! Your Majesty! The princess has lost her memory. Teresa asked, Yenny, what are you saying? After a few minutes, her mother and father came. They were crying after hearing the news that Urenica lost her memory. Her mother asks, Urenica, oh dear Yenny, do you not remember your own mother? She recalls her past life memories. What are we going to do with that girl? Do you want to take care of her? As you know, I have a family of my own to take care of. She was wondering as to what happened. Some people showed up saying they were my parents, but I don't really have anyone I can call family. She wonders, what is this place? Where the heck did I end up? She recalls her past life. I thought I died in that accident. I was on the bus, sitting by the window, reading this very web novel. Then, the whole bus suddenly lurched, and with a huge crash, I lost consciousness, and I woke up here. She concludes, I was grateful enough to still be alive. But a princess? And a pretty one? But something feels off. It feels kind of like déjà vu. This place should be unfamiliar to me, but strangely, it's like I've heard of all this before. While she was busy in her thoughts, a guard came and bowed. He introduced himself. Princess, I am Fernando Cardona, your personal guard. She asks, Huh? What did you say your name was? He replied, Fernando Cardona, your Royal Highness. Hearing the word Cardona, she remembers, I've definitely heard that name before. Remembering the novel she read, she shrugs it off. Nah, it couldn't be. Fernando asked, Pardon? She said, There's no way. Cardona? I see my imagination is running wild. She remembers, I did see that name before. But where? In a web novel. She asked him, Do you have a son? Or a brother? She remembers, there's one person I know with the name Cardona. He was the male protagonist of the web novel I was reading before I died. The heart-stoppingly handsome knight, Alexio Lazaro Cardona. Fernando replied, A son? Your Highness, I'm not married yet, and I'm an only child. Urenica thinks, familiar words. And names. No wonder they all sounded so familiar. These are all from the web novel Bridget Wants to Be Happy. She wonders, am I really in that world? And from what I can tell, I'm currently in the story before the main characters are born. As she was busy thinking, Fernando asks, Are you all right, Princess Urenica? She suddenly remembers, wait, doesn't this novel begin with my sister Teresa being kidnapped while she's pregnant? That's right. Unluckily, it seems, I managed to be transported to this world right when the future's misfortunes are set into motion. After realizing she's in the world inside the novel, she was thinking, no way. No way. This is nonsense. Seriously, this is insane. None of this makes any sense at all. How the heck did I end up in another person's body? Strangely though, I feel like all the pieces are coming together now. On the continent of Riger, there sat a large neighboring country that could easily crush our small nation. That would be the powerhouse of the East, Belcourt. In the story, it's the great king of Belcourt who kidnaps my older sister, Teresa. He invades Livigny, abducts her, and holds her against her will. She shudders as she thinks that. It's absolutely despicable, but if you read the novel, he's actually a character you feel bad for. That's because he meets an unfortunate end when he's tragically killed. She sobs while remembering. That's why I bawled my eyes out when his character died. She recalls as to when the character died. Why? How can you take him away like that? Come on, writer! But even though I felt sorry for him, I'm still scared. Am I scared because he's the ruler of a powerful nation? Or am I scared because this fictional character is suddenly real? Either way, Teresa's kidnapping is the opening act of the original story. It's also the beginning of the disastrous events that befall the generation of the main character's parents. It's a passionate yet strange love story about a princess and her guard. Bridget wants to be happy. The web novel I'm now living in has 3 main characters. The female protagonist, Bridget, daughter of Princess Teresa of Livigny. The male protagonist, Bridget's guard, Alexio, and finally, there's the villain, the tyrannical King DeKalb de Belcourt. In Bridget Wants to Be Happy, the main plot revolves around the 2 protagonists healing the traumas of their sad childhoods. In other words, their parents' generation was doomed. We're not just talking about a few bad things happening. They were all doomed to die young. From the kidnapping in the opening, they had already lost all chance of living anything close to an uneventful life. Bridget's father, Duke Levon, dies in battle trying to get his pregnant wife back. Teresa receives the news while in a country far from home and collapses from the shock. This results in Bridget's premature birth, weeks ahead of the anticipated date. Talks between Belcourt and Livigny break down, so Bridget and her mother are sent back to Livigny when Bridget is 10 years old. DeKalb, heartbroken and enraged at Bridget leaving, begins to use black magic, becoming a villain who can manipulate the souls of the dead. A year after Bridget leaves, when DeKalb turns 11, he kills his own father, the King of Belcourt, using him as a sacrifice in a magic ritual, all because he wanted to become king so he could take over Livigny and regain Bridget. I feel so bad for DeKalb's dad, but no, he's still scary. Meanwhile, Teresa returns to her home country but dies from a plague 2 years later. She counts, that's already 3 people dead in this story. It's truly dreadful. There's Teresa, her husband Duke Levon, and DeKalb's father, the King of Belcourt. Oh, and finally, Fernando, the father of Alexio and my guard, loses an eye and a leg in the war. At this point, the parents' generation is laid to waste by tragedy after tragedy. In comparison, the story of the web novel is a refreshing coming-of-age tale about 2 characters healing from this past. A totally sweet romance story. If I were still reading the web novel, I could dismiss all this as some sad backstory. But shockingly enough, it's now reality. This has to be a dream. I'm in denial. The real me must be lying in a hospital bed in a coma right now from the accident. Or maybe I was abducted by aliens. At first, I didn't accept this as reality. But I can't escape the truth anymore. I'm living a second life. Teresa is far along in her pregnancy, which means Belcourt will come barging in any time now. Teresa asks, Eurenica, why are you staring at me like that? While startled, Eurenica replied, What? Nothing, Teresa said. You're making me feel self-conscious. Eurenica said, It's just a little hard to accept that little Bridget will be born soon. Later she resolved, Yeah, I can't just sit here and do nothing. Who else can do something about this besides me? I know everything about this story. I'll do whatever it takes to stop this tragedy from happening. She devised plans. Plan A, stop Belcourt from invading Livigny. Let's break down the cause and effect. Why does Belcourt invade Livigny? I don't know. I hit a block already. It's not like the parents' stories were all that detailed in the web novel. The only thing I remember are, Livigny refused to fulfill the conditions of an agreement, and this obviously angered the King of Belcourt. She wonders, so, what in the world was the agreement? Fernando asked. Princess Eurenica, is something the matter? You don't look too well, she replied. I'm worried about your right leg and left eye, he asked. Pardon? While waving her hand she said, Never mind. It's nothing. She thinks, it's not like you'd understand. I mean, how could you understand? She then asked him. Hey, Fernando! Did Livigny and Belcourt sign any kind of treaty or agreement? He answered. With Belcourt? Are you speaking of the Glupman Treaty? Eurenica wonders. The Glupman Treaty? She then asked. Did you say the Glupman Treaty? Fernando added. In exchange for Livovny opening access to Gluckman Road, Belcourt promised to provide us with magical ore from Ezekiel, she recalls. The Gluckman Treaty. I'm pretty sure I read that when the characters in the original novel talked about what was going on between the countries. That's it. She paused for a moment. Her mind was racing. So that means the king of Livovny broke the agreement first? Bold moves for the king of a small country. The king who is now my dad, she concludes. I got it. I just need to make sure he upholds the treaty. Fernando stammered, confused as she rushed past him. Why, Your Highness? Where are you going? He called after her, Princess Eurenica. She was taking her steps as fully determined to resolve this. She said in her mind. Sorry, Ferdy. I think I have no choice but to become the hidden hero who saves this kingdom. She barges in and calls, Father. Her father replied. Oh, Eurenica, sweetie. What brings you running to my? She gets close to him, stomping. Her father gets shocked as she calls. Father, about the Gluckman Treaty. After realizing that she had come on too strong. That came out a little too bold. She tells, I knew my father's weakness was my sweet charm, so I switched tactics and turned on the cute factor. She calls, Father. He replied. Yes, sweetheart? Doting her. She said. About the Gluckman Treaty. First her father didn't said anything. She again said, the Gluckman Treaty. Her dismissed with a roll of his eyes. Oh, that? Her father turns her head to the other side and awkwardly said, Now, no need to worry your pretty little head over complicated matters of state, sweetheart. It'll just give you a headache. Looking at that, Eurenica wonders, what the heck was that supposed to mean? She asked. You're not thinking of doing anything funny, are you? Her father asked. What do you mean, anything funny, Eurenica? Feeling a shudder creep down her spine, she realized and no. She screams, Father, leaving him shocked. 3 hours later, she said to her father, I couldn't believe. So you're telling me you closed off Gluckman Road? For 2 years? Her father averted his eyes, clearing his throat. Belcourt doesn't produce magical ore, but they need it to protect their borders and for their capital city. Therefore, trade with ore-rich Ezekiel is necessary. That's why Belcourt did everything to secure rights to use Gluckman Road. It's the quickest way to Ezekiel. But with the recent discovery of a large amount of magical ore in Ezekiel, trade exploded, and my father became greedy. Her father realized, oh, if I play my cards right, I can easily make a lot of money. Let's change the conditions of the treaty. The cost for allowing access to Gluckman Road isn't just a set amount of magical ore, but 10% of the entire amount traded. She scolded her father in her mind. You're a total bully. For the past 50 years, Livovny had received 100 magic ores per payment. Now, father was basically demanding 1,000, with no prior agreement. Realizing all of this, she asked her father, Aren't you afraid of Belcourt retaliating? He waved off, unconcerned. No matter how much of a powerhouse Belcourt is, we're all part of the Rigor Peace Treaty. There's no way they'll attack us. She realized that her father is the reason why the peacekeeper of this continent, Belcourt, lost patience. She was at her wit's end. She asked again, Are you really not going to reopen Gluckman Road? Why should I, sweetheart? He asked with a smile. She stormed away, frustrated beyond belief. Earg, is this guy for real? She failed before she even had a chance to get started. Later, while walking in the garden, she felt defeated thinking about it. She was fuming. Teresa asked while concerned, Eurenica? Is something wrong? You're sighing so much. She tried to brush it off. No, nothing's wrong. Teresa asked again. If anything's bothering you, you have to tell me, she replied. It's nothing. She thinks, I don't want to cause undue concerns while she's pregnant. Teresa said, Whatever happens, you can count on your big sister. I'll do anything to help my Yenny. Eurenica considers, Teresa, you're an angel, she said, grabbing Teresa's hand. No, you count on me. I'll make sure nothing happens to you, Teresa. She thinks, if Plan A failed, then I'd have to resort to Plan B. Plan B, stop the king of Belcourt from abducting Teresa. While feeling determined, she thinks, if I couldn't stop the invasion, I could at least keep her from being taken. But when exactly does Belcourt invade? She quickly made her way to Duke Levin's castle, to meet his younger brother, Sergei Levin, her childhood friend. He asked, What in the world are you doing here? Why aren't you at the palace? She replied, Did he have any idea of all the things going on in my mind? He replied sarcastically, No, I doubt you have much going on in there. but she knew the only way to prepare for the future was to stay by Teresa's side and protect her. A few days ago, she was wondering as to remember when does Belcourt invade. She read it but couldn't remember. She resolved that she can't keep Teresa at the palace. She's a married woman. Sergei sighed. Not that you were ever really ladylike, but you've been acting out of control the past few months. Sergei shook his head while saying, Who'd believe that I was a princess? She replied, If you don't shut up, I'll make you. The people around her didn't notice anything's off, because Urenica and the current Urenica had similar personalities. She wonders, why couldn't I have become some random nameless background character? She thinks, if I knew this would happen, I would have paid more attention to the background story. As she faced Sergei, she said, Sir, promise me, when the time comes, you have to come save me. He raised an eyebrow. Why would I have to come save you? She replied as she giggles. A time will come when you'll have to, knowing what the future held. That's exactly what happens in the first scene of the novel. She recalls the scene from novel. Urenica, we have to go. Let go, sir. What about Teresa? She concludes. All I have to do is make sure Teresa hides somewhere. Of course, I have to hide someplace safe too, but in case things go wrong. Then looking at him, she said, I'm counting on you, Sergei. He rolled his eyes, saying, There you go, saying strange things again. But there was one thing I had forgotten: the king of Belcourt would abduct a princess, and Teresa wasn't the only princess of Livovny. Back at the palace, her mother asked, What did the royal physician say? Teresa replied, He said there's nothing to worry about, while assured her mother said, Oh, that's good to hear. As they were talking, Urenica was feeling nervous and anxious. A strange feeling crept over her. Something felt off. She wonders, what's this bad feeling that suddenly came over me? She thought, maybe I'm just being sensitive from being on guard the past few days. But the nervousness only grew. She tried to shake it off, but it wouldn't leave. Her heart started racing. She thinks I'm nervous, but something's making me really nervous about today. Her heart wouldn't slow down. As she was busy thinking worries, her father said to Teresa, Make sure you look at and listen to good things for the baby. Teresa said with a smile of chaos. Urenica jumped to her feet. I gotta do something. She grasped her arm and said, Teresa, let's go back. You shouldn't be outside for too long. Teresa said. But Yenny, we've barely been here for 2 hours, she insisted, pulling her gently. 2 hours is more than enough. Her mother and father were surprised by her actions. He asked, What's wrong? Urenica responded, Teresa gets tired easily if she's out and about too long. She said to Teresa, I'll get you home. Let's go. Hearing that, her mother said, Oh dear, I thought you were all right, Teresa. While leaving, Urenica waves and said, You should all stay in the palace today. Promise, her father said as she hurried away. Get home safe. As they were leaving, suddenly they heard a voice. Find her, she wonders. What's going on? As they heard marching of soldiers, a guard shouted, We're under attack. Urenica was still wondering. No, is it the Belcourt army? I should look into becoming a fortune teller. Her heart pounded even harder. Yenny, what is this? Teresa asked, her voice shaking. Urenica pulled her along. There's no time. This way, Teresa calls. Yenny! As she was being dragged. But Urenica wasn't listening. She was in a hurry to hide Teresa. Teresa said, Yenny! Urenica, please. Mother and father are. They'll be fine. Urenica interrupted her. She thinks, indeed in the story, absolutely nothing happens to them. King Eurydion takes Teresa and leaves. They reach the hidden passage just in time. She peeked around the corner before explaining quickly. Teresa, she pointed to the floor. Go in here. She tells in her mind this is the secret passage that Bridget discovers as a kid. Showing her the way, she said, See that small knob sticking out of the floor? When the soldiers come in here, quickly press that. Then you'll slide all the way down to the basement. As she went inside, Teresa calls Urenica. Urenica told her, Stay in there and don't come out, okay? Teresa asked while tears dropped down from her eyes. At least explain what's going on. What is this all about? She concludes. There's no way the both of us are fitting in there. I'll just have to go find the second secret passage. As she closes the secret passage, she said, Just worry about Bridget right now. Teresa calls one last time. Urenica! She shoved her in. After that, she thinks, I need to hurry before the soldiers rush in. Peeking through a small gap, she sighed in relief. There. Now Teresa is safe. I'll see you later, she whispered as she turned to leave. Tears were falling from Teresa's face. The sound of swords clashing echoed through the hall. Urenica panicked. Oh no! They're already in here? Holy crap, this is totally serious. She was hiding from the soldiers behind the pillars. She needed to go to the east wing of the palace if she wanted to get to the second secret passage. She was wondering, should I even go there? Or should I just wait here for Sergei? She hesitated, torn between running to the east wing to reach the second secret passage and waiting for Sergei to find her. She remembers, what could Sergei possibly do to save me? He doesn't know where I am. Late in the game, she realized that breaking from the original plot means she can't trust things to work out like it did in the web novel. As she was sobbing, she resolved that it's not that far. I should just make a run for it. Wiping her tears, she gathered her courage. Alright, no one's looking. She cautiously moved forward, thinking the coast was clear. I don't think anyone's looking now. While she was hoping from pillar to pillar someone was looking at her. Suddenly, she froze, realizing that the person was looking at her. His gaze was sharp. She stops and tries to cover her breath with her hand and wonders, what? How long was he looking? The person went towards her, and she trembles as he gets close. She sits down while trembling behind the pillar as her heart raced. She prayed that he just walk by. She thinks, Sergei, now would be a good time for you to come save me. If you show up, I'll give you 100 kisses. Please show up. The person gets close to her, and both of them looks at each other. Standing before her was a man with shiny silver hair and red bedroom eyes glinted with amusement. The person said, looking at her, pink hair and light blue eyes? Got you, Princess Urenica of Livovny, he said smugly. Her heart sank. The king of Belcourt. No! Sergei, you jerk, she thought desperately. The king of Belcourt abducts Urenica and lifts her up on his shoulder. He put her on his shoulder and starts walking. Urenica thinks, I'm screwed. Why is the ground above my head and the sky below my feet? She starts counting, 1 brick, 2 brick. When their soldiers saw the king taking her, they shouted from behind, Princess Urenica, unhand the princess, you brute. The soldiers came rushing to them and attacked them. The king of Belcourt kicked a soldier, while the other were confronted by his soldiers. TSK, such a nuisance. Urenica's stomach was hurting. She thinks, I said I wanted to stop Teresa's abduction, not take her place. Suddenly Sergei came running, calling her name. Urenica. Seeing him running towards her, she shouted, Sergei, what took you so long, you big jerk? Eurydion was fighting with soldiers while carrying Urenica. Urenica sniffles and said, Excuse me? Mr. Belcourt, sir? Hey, could you put me down, please? Eurydion asked. You want me to let you go? She shouted while tears fall from her face. I'm not even asking for that. I just want to be put down. I'll walk on my own 2 feet. Or could you at least hold me right side up? She added. It's just that, HNGH. It really hurts. It hurts. Your armor hurts. Eurydion put her down, but on a horse. She got shocked while seeing that she's on a horse. She hit her head on the horse's neck. What's happening? Put me down. I'm scared. Eurydion hushed the horse. Hush, hush. He rode the horse beside Urenica and said, Keep your back straight and lean against me. Urenica did as he said and asked. Like this, he replied. Yes, like that. He then ordered. Army of Belcourt, we ride. Then the horse lifts her legs and then starts galloping. We'll pass through the magic circle. Don't fall behind. Urenica wonders. A magic circle? She saw the circle, it was bright. My eyes. Eurydion cover her eyes with his hand and orders. Don't stop. Keep going. We won't stop until we're on Belcourt soil. After a while Urenica was unconscious. She opened her eyes while Eurydion was talking with Mage. He said, I had no idea her body wouldn't take to magic this strongly. Eurydion asked him, So, you're saying you can't wake her up? Hearing that, Urenica thinks, It's all so noisy. She opened her eyes and first thing she saw was Eurydion. He said, You're awake? She said, Whoa, a hot guy. A hot guy talked to me. That's nice. Eurydion called. Princess, he asked the mage. Is something terribly wrong with her? He replied. Allow me to examine her, your majesty. He sat close to her and said, Your highness, if you'll pardon me. He activated a magic circle on his hand. Urenica felt nauseous. He extends his hand towards Urenica and said, One moment, your highness. Urenica thinks, What's this? Did I get motion sickness? And a headache. As he touched her head, she felt a surge of pain in her head. she thinks. It feels like my head's going to explode. It hurts. It's torture. She was in pain. She tried to reach out to someone to save her. She was praying. Please, someone, anyone, help me. As she touched someone's foot, her pain disappeared. What? The pain disappeared. A foot? It was Eurydian's foot. He was looking worried for her. He asked, Princess, are you alright? She replied while sobbing, I'm alright. She shouted, Wah, what the heck? She recalls, I was on full alert the past few days to protect Teresa, only to end up kidnapped and slung around like a sack. And then I was on a galloping horse, and I've never even been on a horse. Then I was tormented by a pain I never felt before in my life. If I knew all of this would have happened, she again shouted, no, I still would have done it all again. That's what makes it even sadder. Eurydian calls, Princess. She complained, you mean it? Horrible. If you couldn't get my sister, why didn't you just go home? Why'd you have to take me? She thought, on top of that, of all the things to grab, why did I grab his foot? Eurydian then lifts her up, and she was surprised. Huh. She looks at his face and thinks, so, handsome. Tears were falling from her face. Eurydian asked, what are you so sad about? Then she realized that she was floating in the air. Her foots were not touching the ground. After that, Eurydian put her down, and she was sitting on a Belcourt's flag. Eurydian wipes her tears and said, I did not know you were sensitive to magic. I'm sorry. Did it hurt a lot? She replied. Why yes, he added. And for the sudden abduction, seems like it was quite the shock. She thinks, ugh, this is humiliating. She snatches his handkerchief from Eurydian and said, I'll do it. She then tries to understand. But what was the pain I felt earlier? Not that I feel it anymore. Then Eurydian asked, were you sensitive around magic or magical ores before? She replied, I have no idea. A magic sensitivity? He again asked. You don't know? She shakes her head and said, I've never had something like this happen before. She then said to herself in her mind, though when I say before, I mean just the past 8 months that I know of. Eurydian then asked, Rolf, what happened? He turns his head to look towards him. Looking at him, Eurynica recalls, one moment, Your Highness. The guy who touched me before? The pain got worse after that man touched me. I know it, Rolf explained. If someone is more sensitive to magic than the average person, something like this can easily happen. Eurydian asked, could the person with the sensitivity not know about it? Rolf takes a glance and said while thinking, maybe if one grew up in an environment with little to no exposure to magic. Eurydian again asked, then why is she fine again? Rolf replied while anxious, I'm not quite sure myself, Your Majesty. He bowed and said, perhaps I can find out if I examine the princess a bit more, but it seems difficult to touch her. Eurydian takes a sigh and said, I see. Anyhow, I guess this means it's impossible to use a magic circle again. He stands up and instructed, we've crossed the border, so from this point on, we go by horse. The soldiers replied, yes, sir. Eurydian then said to Eurynica, you also seemed unfamiliar with horse riding. Eurynica quickly replied, I can ride a horse, he said. You look too scared to be saying that, she said. I can't ride one on my own, but, she thinks in her mind, for some reason, I feel like I'm being a huge bother. Wait, hold up. I'm the one who's kidnapped here. Why am I worried about bothering the kidnapper? The reality struck her, he said. Then you'll come with me. If we ride all day, then we'll arrive the day after tomorrow. Eurynica thinks in her mind. Yeah, it's all because that guy's being too nice. No matter how I think about it, he's way too considerate for a kidnapper. DeKalb as a character easily became obsessive because he felt deprived of love and affection. I thought his father would be a lot colder. Asterisk. Eurydian extends his hand to offer her. Get up. Eurynica grabs his hand and said, thank you? She asked. Do you have any intention of returning me to Livivny? Eurydian doesn't speak for a moment. Eurynica thought, I knew it. No matter how nice he looks in the novel, he's the guy who kept Teresa captive for 10 years. Eurydian spoke. Once I reach a settlement with Livivny. Until then, I'll guarantee your safety and comfort. I swear on the name of Belcourt. Hearing that, Eurynica recalls, this is a man who will be brutally slaughtered by his own son before he turns 40. This is probably what it feels like, to be the only person in this world who knows how his life will end. He asked, so may I request your cooperation, princess? Eurynica thinks, I feel a similar sense of responsibility that I did for Teresa. he continued. Thought there's not much I can do if this comes across as a threat. Then a sudden thought hit her. Now that I think about it, I don't even know this man's name because he doesn't appear in the novel. She mumbled. Mr. Dad, father of... Eurydion was shocked. Father? She asked. May I ask for your name, sir? He said. Eurydion. Eurydion Lewis Soldad de Belcourt. She also introduced herself. As you already might know, I'm Eurenica Sophia Livovny. She smiles and said, Nice to meet you. He replied. The pleasure is mine. After that they started traveling by horses. Eurenica was tense riding the horse. Eurydion guided her. Relax your body, princess. If you keep your upper body too stiff, your back will hurt, she shouted. No, it doesn't hurt at all. She thinks in her mind, did he take his armor off because I whined about how much it hurt? It is a bit more comfortable. But, my butt, without the armor, our bodies are too close together. I can feel his tight muscles through his clothes, and with this movement, I'm feeling everything too well. She was blushing as she was single her whole life because she's shy. Mentally, 25 years old, plus 8 months. She looks at his face and thinks, also, does this guy not sweat? He smells clean and cool. I think it's actually making me feel better. It's almost like I feel energized. She starts taking heavy breaths. Then she realized, oh my god, I had no idea I was such a thirsty woman. She was about to fall but Eurydion catches her. She said, Sit still, princess. She replied, Yes. She thinks, Yup, this all feels too embarrassing. A few hours later, Eurenica was feeling pain and was lying on the ground. She thinks in her mind, Now what's going on? Humph, all I did was watch Rolf make a fire. I'm dying. As Eurydion picks her she thinks, now's not the time to be embarrassed about him touching me. As he pulls her close she thinks, the pain's definitely subsiding. Eurydion embraced her and said, How strange. Isn't she a little too sensitive, Rolf? Eurenica was still trembling. Rolf replied, All I did was start a fire. Eurenica recalls, This is already the third time I had this strange reaction. First, when we went through the magic circle. Once, when they tried to use healing magic on me. And just now, all Rolf did was use magic to start a fire for the camp. Rolf said, It seems that the princess is a person unadapted to magic. Eurydion asked while patting her. Unadapted to magic? Rolf said. Yes. It's very rare, but every now and then there are humans who are unable to physically or mentally handle magic. Eurenica thinks, No. There's a more basic reason. She recalls Rolf saying, Maybe if one grew up in an environment with little to no exposure to magic. She thinks, to be someone who has not been exposed to magic in this world where magic exists obviously can also be interpreted as me not being a person of this world. I may be wearing Eurenica's body, but I'm still Ususu. Eurydion instructed. Refrain from using magic for now, Rolf. It seems she can't handle even the smallest of magic spells, so be careful. She mind raced, however. What I don't understand the most in this situation is, why does it hurt enough that I feel like I'm going to die? But then the pain disappears as soon as this man touches me. Eurydion lifts her up to his face and asked, Are you sure nothing like this happened before in Livovny, princess? She thinks, for the past 8 months. This is the first time I've even seen a mage since I first came to this world. Compared to Belcourt, Livovny is a weak country. Magical ore, only used to protect the borders. Magic users, mostly hires foreigners, as there are no royal mages. Tower of magic, none. Meanwhile, Belcourt, magical ore, imports tons. Magic users, systematically developed. Black magic is widely used in secret. Tower of magic, has one. My body rejects magic, and that's the kind of kingdom I'm being taken to? No joke, but I might actually just drop dead, she said. Could you just knock me out instead? Eurydion asked. What? She said. Just whap a real quick one in the back of the head. You should be able to quickly make it to the palace while I'm out, he asked. So you want me to hit you? She said. At least that pain is momentary. It'd be nice to open my eyes and be in a bed, he said. I reject your request. He put her down and said, I won't allow the mistreatment of another kingdom's royalty. She asked, Why do you have to be such a considerate kidnapper? She then pointed and said, That guy over there has an arm that's sliced open, and look at that guy's leg. You can't even light a fire without magic. That means we can't eat, and you can't heal them either. And I cannot continue to detain you any longer. If you feel bad about raising your hand to me, you could just go through a magic circle like before. I'll probably pass out from that," he asked. "What if I do that and something terrible happens to you?" She takes a glance at his face and said, "If something goes wrong, you could just hug me, like you did just now." She giggles as she said that. She thinks in her mind, "I am absolutely not saying this because I have feelings for him. Absolutely not." Then Eurydion takes a sigh and sighed. "That wouldn't be hard to do. But once again, I refuse your request. We can always manually build a fire. And you are an unarmed woman who cannot even hold a sword. You definitely are terrible at hiding yourself. Those men are seasoned troops of Belcourt. You cannot compare yourself to them," Eurenica admitted. "That's true, but," he added, "I asked you for your cooperation, not your sacrifice. Did I not guarantee your safety and comfort? Unless you want to make the master of Belcourt a liar, it's best you quit this conversation. But just in case, stay close to me. The borders of Belcourt are protected by magical ore." Eurenica felt touched and was almost about to cry. She then resolves herself and thinks, "No, I cannot allow it. I can't let a man like this die at a young age because his son uses him as a test subject for black magic," she said. "Decalb's father. I'm going to save him," Eurydion asked. "Why do you keep saying so-and-so's father?" Eurenica said. "You can count on me." While sitting near the campfire, Eurenica thinks, "The air in Belcourt is heavier than Livigny. It's so imbued with magic that I felt like I could hardly breathe. Yet, just being next to him makes it easier to breathe. This man definitely has some kind of miracle cure coursing through his body." Eurydion asked. "Is there no treatment then?" "Nothing has been discovered yet," Ralph replied, keeping his distance for her safety. Eurenica thinks, "This is a serious situation." Ralph explained, "The established theory is that those who are maladjusted to magic usually don't survive past the 5th year of their life. I'm not exactly sure how Princess Eurenica survived this long." Eurenica was shocked hearing that. "Huh!" she shouted. "Did you say the 5th year? 5 years?" Ralph replied. "Yes, that is usually the case. It doesn't matter if they lived somewhere with as little magical influence as possible. Magic isn't something that only flows in the earth. Magic is one of the 2 powerful forces that make up this world. It's in the very ground we walk on and the air we breathe. It's obvious that it would be difficult for someone maladjusted to magic to survive here." "Don't give me a death sentence with such a calm look on your face," she exclaimed to herself. Ralph replied, "I'm simply stating that you're an exception, Your Highness. You made it totally fine into adulthood." She thinks, "That's because the real Eurenica was fine until now. Since I've been here for almost 9 months at this point, that means the time I have left until my 5th year here is," she blurted out, "4 years and 3 months. Eurydion heard and asked, "Princess?" She quickly stands up with shock and thinks, "I'm terminally ill?" She said, "This is crazy." Eurydion grabs her hand and pulls her down and said, Wait. Calm down, Princess," continue Rolf. "Perhaps the blood of the gods that flows through you helps neutralize the effects of magic. If I may carefully offer my conjecture, that is..." He clears his throat after saying that. Eurydion said, "Divinity and magic. I can see that." Eurenica thinks while remembering the novel, "Oh, right. This is a world where gods exist." The divinity of the Belcourt royal family was extensively discussed in Decalb's side story. Belcourt is the seat of the Holy Empire because the royal family descended from Loris, the god of peace and prosperity. He's literally the descendant of a god. He's basically like the Jesus of this world. Rolf continued, "With your divine lineage, the princess can be assured she will be safe in your presence. Even without you calling upon your divinity, there is an energy that surrounds you. Princess Eurenica is probably reacting to that energy," Rolf explained to them. After hearing that, Eurenica thinks, "Oh, so the king's divinity can help save me and my useless body?" Rolf then shouted, "Princess Eurenica, have you been blessed by the god Loris?" Eurenica was surprised. "Blessed by Loris? As she doesn't know it." Eurydion asked her, "Have you been baptized?" She said, "Baptized? Oh," she recalls, "as soon as Teresa knew she was pregnant with Bridget, she received a blessing, didn't she? Since royalty tends to receive Loris' blessing even before they're born, I'm sure Eurenica was too." She replied, "I probably did." Eurydion was surprised. "Probably?" She said, "I did." She thinks while remembering, "He's probably not going to ask for my baptismal name since that's a little rude. In this world, you do not tell anyone your baptismal name unless they are your parents or your spouse. It's considered insulting to the holy name given to you by God. That's why in the original novel, Alexio tells Bridget his baptismal name when he confesses his feelings for her. Now's not the time to be thinking about that. She shakes those thoughts, Eurydion said. If you were baptized, then it's a possibility, since Livovny is one of the kingdoms where Loris is the patron god. Ralph laughs and continued. Yes, and maybe the princess was able to survive until now because of God's blessing upon her. Eurenica thinks, haha, Ralph did nothing wrong. If anyone's at fault here, it's me for being an interloper in this world, Eurenica said. Then I'm relieved to hear that, since the capital is on holy ground. Ralph added, I also think that will be a good thing. Eurenica summarized, I'm a person from another world, so I have no immunity to magic, making me maladjusted to magic. But luckily, Eurenica's body was blessed by Loris, so as long as I stay near someone with strong divine energy, I should be alright. Her plan B was, stop the king of Belcourt from kidnapping Teresa. The plan was almost a success, but I stupidly ended up kidnapped. On top of that, I'm absolutely useless since I unexpectedly found out I'm sensitive to magic. She takes a sigh and thinks, my survival is most important, so now's not the time to be worrying about someone else. She takes a glance and thinks, but I can't believe that the supporting character who dies a tragic death in the original novel is now the person who'll save me. As Eurydion looks towards her, she mumbles, I guess. Plan C. Ship the side characters together. It's a win-win. This leaves only one conclusion. Life definitely requires a plan C. She devised a plan C at that moment. Until I find a way to exist normally in this body, I need to stay right next to Eurydion. And to prevent Eurydion from being murdered by his son must not learn black magic. DeKalb learned black magic from his mother, so to stop DeKalb from learning black magic, I just need to stop Eurydion from marrying that woman in the first place. Then, all he has to do is marry me. As she was busy thinking, Eurydion calls, Princess? She jolted and said, ACK, yes? She looks at him and thinks, it seems a little disrespectful to think about that when he's right here in front of me, but this is perfect. The next day, as they were preparing to leave, Eurenica kept looking at Eurydion and thinks, marrying a kind, handsome man. I don't care if I'm suffering from delusions of grandeur. It's nice just thinking about it. Eurydion smiles and asks, what are you thinking about? I was thinking, you're pretty hot for a dad. She giggles as she said that. She thinks inwardly, no, I'm thinking about marrying you. Eurydion doesn't speak, as he was surprised to say anything. Eurenica thinks, looking at him, why is he staring at me like I'm some strange creature? Memories flashed before her eyes, like a slideshow. She remembers, sure, he saw me in some unseemly moments, but I don't think I was that much of a pest. She then remembers all the embarrassing moments, and said to herself, no, stop thinking about it. She felt defeated and in despair. Looking at her, Eurydion said, you're quite extraordinary. Eurenica interpreted as extraordinary? Does that mean he thinks I'm very strange? She thinks as thunder were rumbling in her mind. This is so humiliating. That's it. There's no way he'll marry me now. This might be a matter of life and death for me. But why would the king of Belcourt marry a princess from a tiny kingdom? Eurydion calls, Princess Eurenica, come here. She walks to him formally. He lifts her up and put her on the horse. She sat down on the horse and thinks, I'm slowly getting used to this sort of thing. After that, Eurydion ordered his soldiers, let's go. We'll make it to the capital today, so keep your spirits up, men, he commands. Yes, sir, they reply. Eurenica thinks in her mind, even if it's impossible for me to marry this man, I need to stop him from marrying a dark magician. I know from the original story, she recalls the novel. Her mother said to him, DeKalb, you're a monster born of the strongest divine power and the most evil magic. If you want, you can have everything in this world, even the distant world of the gods beyond the Udetta, as long as you desire it. What do you think? Do you want to hold all the power in the world in your hands? She concludes she's at fault for DeKalb's corruption. She led her own son down the path of black magic. She must be out of her mind. She thoughts, then how do I stop this marriage? A sudden thought hits her, wait, hold on. When does Eurydion get married? I know Bridget will be born in 2 months. No, since Teresa didn't get kidnapped, maybe it'll be 3 months from now? Bridget and Alexio are the same age, and DeKalb is 1 year younger. DeKalb is 1 year younger than Bridget? If I'm being generous, I have only a year to stop this. Your Majesty? She asked hesitantly. He replied, What is it? She thinks, how should I ask him this? He calls, Princess? She blurted out, Your Majesty, are you unwed? Or are you expecting a child? What? He exclaims. She thinks in her mind, I know this is ridiculous. He replied, First, I'm not married yet. She asked, Yet? He continued, Therefore I obviously don't have a child and I am definitely not expecting one. After hearing that, she thinks, unmarried with no kids is a good thing. But why did he say yet? Why do I have a bad feeling? He said you ask peculiar things, Princess, and with no provocation. They finally arrive in Belcourt. The city looks old and historical, while Livovny looks more charming in comparison. She was glancing all around. Eurydion puts her robe on her and said, The crowd's gaze might be uncomfortable. Irenica looks at the Corrid. The crowd cheers. Sire, long live Belcourt! Eurenica thinks, this is a huge crowd, and if it wasn't for this cape, I would have been completely overwhelmed. He's so kind-hearted, the perfect husband material. After reaching the palace, Eurydion puts her down the horse. She thinks, if I could, I'd kidnap him myself and make him my husband. Not that I really could. But a girl can imagine. Suddenly someone came running to Eurydion and said, Your Majesty, I'm so relieved you made it back safe and sound. You have no idea how worried I was. Eurenica was surprised looking at her. Lady Elodia starts the conversation with an emotional declaration. I miss you, Your Majesty. Her passionate words immediately grab attention, but Eurydion's calm and distant demeanor contrasts her fervor. The protagonist watches the interaction, stunned, thinking, whoa, no freaking way. Lady Elodia continues dramatically. Every day, my tears wet my pillow. Do you understand how that feels? The protagonist is speechless at the scene unfolding before her, observing Lady Elodia's stunning beauty and noting, she's gorgeous. Her voice is beautiful. The way she talks, it's absolutely bewitching. Even though the protagonist is a straight woman, she admits, I can't help being drawn to her. I wonder how Eurydion. Her thoughts are cut short when Eurydion responds to Lady Elodia's emotional plea with a flat. It's only been 3 days, Lady Elodia. Lady Elodia isn't deterred and counters passionately. Those 3 days felt like 3 years to me. Eurydion, however, seems unmoved, and the protagonist notices this, thinking, what's with that look on his face? How can he look so uninterested with this beautiful woman in front of him? She observes his reaction, or lack thereof, and muses. He says he's thinking of falling in love, but he looks like she barely registers on his radar. Making a pretty lady cry like that, so cruel. The least he could do is say something to reassure her. The protagonist debates intervening herself but ultimately stays quiet. Lady Elodia presses on, saying, Oh my, don't you think you're being a little heartless, Your Majesty? I might live in this very palace one day, so why should I not be here? On top of that, she pauses dramatically before adding, The man who might become my husband has returned. Who else would come out to greet you? Eurydion gives a short, polite response. Yes, thank you. This leaves the protagonist reeling, her mind racing. She might live here one day? The man who might be her husband. What? Does that mean this beautiful woman is the Kalb's mother? The protagonist pieces together more clues, thinking, the one who will be the queen of Belcourt and Eurydion's wife. The evil black magician and necromancer who can control corpses and summon souls from hell. The true nemesis of the protagonist's parents' generation in the original novel. So Lady Elodia? Eurydion finally clarifies. I'm not married yet. The protagonist, however, misinterprets this as confirmation that he's already betrothed. Her thoughts spiral into despair. When he said he wasn't married yet, he just meant that he was betrothed. Lady Elodia asks softly, Are you hurt, Your Majesty? The protagonist reflects bitterly, it's hopeless. No way could I compete with that pretty lady, not a chance. She even considers absurd ideas. I'd probably have a better chance flirting with the villain's mom and convincing her to not teach DeKalb black magic. She labels this her Plan C, shipping the side characters as a win-win. The emotional tension builds further when Lady Elodia says, Enough crying, Lady Elodia. I don't have a handkerchief right now, Kuaz. I have all of his handkerchiefs, covered in tears and snot besides. Eurydion shifts the conversation, saying, It's probably best if you go back home right now. I can't keep my men standing around like this any longer. I also have an important guest. Lady Elodia is taken aback but doesn't relent. Meanwhile, The protagonist observes Eurydian's rigid demeanor. I knew Eurydian could be a rigid guy, but he's not falling for her charms at all. She compares her own position to Lady Elodia's, concluding, considering that he doesn't treat her any differently than me, and they're engaged, my plan definitely doesn't have a chance. The protagonist is still deep in thought when she notices Lady Elodia glaring at her. Suddenly, her head begins to spin, and her body feels heavy. She panics, thinking, this feels different from anything else I've felt. This is strange. My body feels heavy. I feel like I'm sinking into the ground, deep into the ground, deeper and deeper, down into the underworld. The realization hits her. The underworld? Wait, did the pretty lady? Before she can piece it all together, Lady Elodia makes one last plea to Eurydian. Then at least promise me we'll see each other again soon, so that I can look forward to something while waiting. See you next time. Meanwhile, the protagonist struggles with an overwhelming sensation. It feels like the blood is being drained from my body. I'm being dragged down. The guards and onlookers notice her distress, shouting, Princess Eurenica! Your Majesty, the princess! She gasps, struggling for air. I can't breathe. I feel like I'm going to die. Eurydian steps in, saving her from the brink once again. The protagonist looks at him in awe, thinking, once again, this man saved me. But Lady Elodia's presence looms heavy, and the protagonist hears someone say, I don't know who you are, but it looks like you're being haunted by the damned. The protagonist's thoughts race. That feeling I just had. She definitely tried to kill me with black magic. Invisible hands of the damned that can drag a living person into the underworld. That's exactly how DeKalb's magic was described in the novel. Eurenica's mind races as she pieces together her predicament, silently screaming, What the heck did I do to you, lady? Eurydian's commanding voice interrupts, addressing Lady Elodia directly. Lady Elodia, she responds with a composed, Yes, your majesty. His tone sharpens as he continues, You speak imprudently to royalty of another foreign nation. As a vassal of Belcourt, you should not embarrass me. Soliae immediately shifts her tone, offering an apology. I was simply worried for you, sire. The tension rises when Eurenica stammers internally, what? Soliae now turns her attention to Eurenica, adopting a diplomatic front. I see that you're royalty from Livivny. I'm sorry if I insulted you. You seem very unwell. If you'd like, as an apology, I would like to show you to your quarters. Would that be alright? The offer, however, sets Eurenica's nerves on edge. Her thoughts run wild. What? Sorry if I insulted you. She wants to show me to my room. I would have fallen for that pretty face if it wasn't for the attempted murder. I'm not an idiot. No way I'm following. Feigning illness, she collapses dramatically, gasping. Princess? I'm dying. Eurydian sighs with exasperation. Your Majesty, you don't give me a moment's rest. Eurenica inwardly grins. Nice, just as I planned. I'm not much of an actor, but I was the queen of faking illness back in the day. Eurydian dismisses his knights with a simple command. Men, good work. You may go rest now. They bow and respond in unison. Yes, your Majesty. He then turns to Soliae, his voice firm. Lady Elodia, you should go home as well. Soliae hesitates, her voice trembling slightly. Why, your Majesty? Eurenica's thoughts burst with defiance. You tried to kill me. You villain. You patricide enabler. You big meanie. You think I'll let a man like this marry a woman like you? DeKalb's dad can marry any other woman in the world besides her. She glares at Soliae with all her might, mentally taunting. Go ahead. Keep glaring at me like that. What you gonna do? Eurydian observes her expressions with amusement, remarking, You know, you're terrible at hiding things. Eurenica retorts, I don't think so. Eurydian counters, I do. Her internal monologue falters. I know it's easy to read what I'm thinking on my face. Her memory flashes back to her old life, where her boss would constantly chastise her for her transparent expressions. She cringes internally. What the? I can't believe I'm hearing the same critique from my real job in this fantasy world. So embarrassing. Eurydian continues, his tone light. The first time was for real. But the second time, you probably faked it. Eurenica freezes. He knows. Her fear intensifies as Celia's ominous presence looms larger in her mind. She scares me, she whispers. I thought as a black magician, she'd keep that hidden. There's a type of dark magic that snatches away souls that need to return to God and turns corpses into puppets. If you are caught practicing this, it's execution. No question. That is why black magic is secretly passed on, from teacher to student, and from that student to their student, and so on. Eurenica reels as the pieces come together. Yet the fact that she openly holds the spot of second in command at the Tower of Magic is. Her thoughts trail off as she considers Celia's immense power. Oh, she must be very powerful, but she gives me a strange feeling. A sudden realization strikes her. I think I messed with the wrong person. Eurydion addresses Eurenica, his voice calm but resolute. I'll speak with Soleil so that she doesn't use magic in your presence. Eurenica protests weakly. No, what I mean is, I felt cold, damp, invisible hands. Eurydion reassures her. But it might be best if you two avoid one another. Magic is like a second skin to her. She did a lot of work to help develop Belcourt's Tower of Magic. She wields a great deal of magical power. That's probably why you felt the way you did earlier. Eurenica's internal panic intensifies. I'm screwed. I can't even try my luck here. She's struck by the futility of her situation, whispering internally, that woman you trust so much is a black magician who should be executed right now. I found out because I read it all in a book. It's not like I can tell him that. She glances nervously at Soleil, thinking, besides, if I don't watch what I say, I feel like that scary lady would totally slaughter me. Euridion's commanding presence returns as he asserts. She will no longer freely enter the palace as she did today. Eurenica's heart flutters unexpectedly. Whoa, DeKalb's dad is so cool. Her composure falters as she stammers. Thank you? She catches herself, embarrassed. I almost fell for that handsome face. The scene shifts as Eurenica's attention is drawn to a palace in the distance. She marvels at its architecture. The onion-shaped white domes, the big windows, the ivory curtains. A little palace that looks like the royal palace in Livivny. As realization dawns, she gasps, is this? Let me down, please. Her thoughts flash back to the original novel. There Zia held her pregnant stomach as she looked up at the white onion-shaped castle in a daze. It was an exterior that reminded her of her home, and tears poured down her face. Did the king of Belcourt arrange this for her? She realizes. This is where Zia and Bridget lived in the original novel. Beryllia Palace. Eurenica stood in awe, thinking. It looks exactly like how it's described in the novel. She was interrupted by a polite greeting. It's an honor to meet you, Princess Eurenica. Confused, she replied with a hesitant. The maid, with light brown hair, approached her with a warm demeanor, pulling back the curtains gracefully. Your Grace, how are you feeling today? She asked, her tone gentle and precise. Eurenica observed her attentively, recalling the novel. This particular maid looked after Teresa with the most care out of all the maids in Beryllia Palace. Trying to mask her familiarity, Eurenica responded, I'm all right. But the memory of the novel lingered. Teresa and Bridget were closest to this maid, Marianne, during their time in Belcourt. This is my first time meeting her, yet I feel like I know her already. What the? This feels strange. Walking through the palace, Eurenica noticed every detail. The grand staircase, the radiant sunlight streaming into the room. This is where Teresa and Bridget lived, where Bridget's story began. The vivid sunsets described in the novel. It's all here. The world that had once existed as words on a page was now tangible. Standing in the room, Eurenica felt conflicted. Even though I confirmed a long time ago that this was the world of the novel I was reading, why do I suddenly feel this way? Is it because this is where Teresa spent 10 painful years? She steeled herself. No matter what, I did the right thing. It's a good thing I stopped Teresa from being dragged far from home while pregnant. Her thoughts were interrupted by Eurydion. Is the castle to your liking, princess? He asked, his tone formal yet gentle. Startled, she quickly replied. Yes, it's nice here. Internally, she mused. Did he want to provide a place that reminds me of Livivny? Eurydion seemed relieved by her answer. I'm curious about something, princess, he began. Why do you keep calling me father or dad? You've mentioned it several times now. His directness flustered her. She laughed nervously. Because you kind of remind me of my father? Her thoughts betrayed her. That's a lie. But I can't tell him the real reason. When I read the novel and he died, I shouted, Father, and cried so hard. Oh, DeKalb's dad. How could they kill you off like that? Eurydion narrowed his eyes, clearly unconvinced. You're not a very good liar, he remarked dryly. Eurenica protested weakly. It's true. His piercing gaze didn't waver. You're only good at being insistent, he added. Embarrassed, she tried to redirect the conversation. I won't do that anymore. I'll be careful, I promise. Eurydion nodded, his tone softening. Good. It is disconcerting, after all. Rest well, and if you need anything, call a maid immediately. As he turned to leave, his parting words carried weight. You're an important guest of Belcourt. If there's anything you want, don't hesitate to ask. As long as you remain here. Eurenica watched him go, her thoughts swirling. This guy. The way he naturally oozes consideration makes my heart flutter. She recalled how he had spoken harshly to Soliai earlier. Maybe he's not always so kind. Maybe he's the type to cut someone off immediately if they cross a line. Before she could stop herself, she called out, Your Majesty, are you going to marry that woman? Eurydion paused, surprised. You mean Soliai Elodia? He asked. Well, I suppose that is what will happen. She's not lacking in qualities befitting a queen. Eurenica felt frustration rise. What does that even mean? It's not a matter of lacking qualities. She's not fit for the position at all. She's a powerful mage who uses outlawed black magic, and she tried to kill me. And more importantly, she'll encourage your son to kill you. But I don't have evidence to prove any of this. She clenched her fists. I must make him trust me more than Soliai Elodia. I have to do whatever I can to protect him. Eurydion's final words echoed in her mind as he left. You're a princess of Livivny. You should be more cautious. Determined, Eurenica resolved to act, her exhaustion giving way to newfound resolve. Eurenica finds herself in an unexpected lesson as Eurydion begins to lecture her about being cautious. Eurydion advises firmly. Be more cautious. First, in private places like your bedchambers, you should not allow just any person inside. Eurenica responds cheekily. But you followed me in here, sire. Ignoring her comment, Eurydion continues. Secondly, if anyone follows you in, you should immediately order them to leave. Eurenica tilts her head in confusion. What do you? Eurydion doesn't stop, stating his third point. Thirdly, do not hold on to any man who willingly leaves. Eurenica is taken aback. Why'd he have to specifically say man? Is he talking about this situation right now? Deciding to push her luck, she considers this a chance to test his boundaries. What if I have feelings for him? How far can I push this? She resolves to use her charm to gain the upper hand over Soliai Elodia. Trying her best to be alluring, Eurenica boldly asks, What if I were to say I have feelings for you, sire? Would I still have to be cautious? Eurydion's expression doesn't waver. He responds calmly. And fourthly, don't say words like that to just anyone anywhere. That's not... He sighs, glancing at her antics. You really should not try to fool me, princess. Eurenica freezes, but her thoughts race. He thinks he notices things well? Yet he has no idea how evil the woman he trusts is. She quips aloud. So you don't see me as a woman? Eurydion's expression hardens. Why are you not a woman? And that sort of thinking does not justify your reckless behavior, princess. He pauses, then adds with a sigh. You truly are unpredictable. I leave you to your rest. As Eurydion leaves, Eurenica slumps. Dang it. I failed. So not just any old trick is going to work on seducing this man, huh? Fine. Just you wait and see. In Eurydion's thoughts, he reflects on the curious princess. What in the world does that young princess of Livivny wish to do? Such an interesting woman. Nothing about the cute way she looks says she's strong or determined, yet I can definitely sense that inside her. He recalls the reasoning behind his recent actions. I never intended to harm whomever I kidnapped. The attack was supposed to be a warning to Livivny, nothing more. I thought stepping in myself would send a direct message. I even ordered my elite unit to cause minimal damage. Yet, somehow, I feel like I brought back something quite troublesome. His musings are interrupted as a subordinate reports. We've removed anything that might have magic within a 200-yard radius of Berillia Palace. Eurydion nods, but after a moment's thought, he orders, Make it 500 feet. The subordinate hesitates. Sire? That will reach the royal garden. Eurydion remains firm. That's all right. Go ahead and do it. I promise to guarantee her safety, and I wouldn't want to find her harmed by accident. Later, Eurydion observes Eurenica from afar, smiling faintly. She's like a kitten who doesn't know anything about the world. Turning serious, he commands Ferric. Don't allow Soliai Elodia to enter the palace grounds for now. Let the staff know. Ferric is taken aback. But, Your Majesty, Lady Elodia may not take this kindly. Eurydion brushes off the concern. Until now, I didn't concern myself with Lady Elodia, but with such an important guest to protect, I cannot allow her free rein. Her unchecked magic is a risk. The next day, Eurydion reflects on his decisions, only to slightly regret one of them as unexpected developments arise. Eurenica wakes up and stretches groggily. That's strange. You must have been exhausted from your long journey. You slept almost the entire day, a maid informs her. The whole day? Eurenica gasps. She feels her body, noting, my body does feel a little lighter after sleeping for so long, but I don't feel any more refreshed. Her thoughts swirl as she considers, wonder if I'll feel better once I wash up and eat. Also, it's strange that I slept almost 24 hours without waking up once. I definitely felt like I was recovering when I was standing in front of Eurydion. With a shrug, she rationalizes, I guess I was just exhausted. I did sit on a galloping horse all day. As Eurenica accepts her situation, a maid enters to speak. Your Highness, I was given special instructions for looking after you. Oh? And what might those be? Eurenica asks. You are sensitive to magic? The maid inquires. Yes, quite a lot actually. Eurenica admits, quickly adding, but I'm alright, so don't worry. She waves off the concern, determined not to let her weakness define her. After all, the treatment for being maladjusted to magic is the king himself. Despite her reassurances, the maid looks at her with pity. Eurenica mutters to herself, that's the face of someone worried for a terminally ill princess who's putting on a brave face. She raises her voice to clarify. No, that's not me. No need to feel that way, the maid then shares. All the magical ores in Beryllia Palace have been removed, not just here, but also within 500 yards around the palace. So you can put your mind at ease. Eurenica considers this, trying to calculate the distance. How far is a 500-yard radius? She notices the maid looking at her amusedly. She probably thinks I don't know the palace layout at all, and she'd be right. The maid suggests, would you like to go out and walk the grounds? There are markers as you reach 500 feet, so it won't be difficult to spot. Markers? What markers? Eurenica wonders aloud. She decides whether I flirt with Eurydion or chase off Soliae. I'll be staying here for the time being, so I might as well get a lay of the land. Better to see for myself than ask a bunch of questions. As Eurenica begins her exploration, she marvels at the scenery. She really meant it when she said the markers wouldn't be hard to spot. She mutters. She notices a garden in the distance. It looks like a garden of sorts over there. Is that the palace garden? The maid confirms. Beyond those markers is the royal garden by the main palace. The 500-yard radius goes to the main royal garden in the east, Chiarda Palace to the west, the drill hall to the south, and the northern gate of the palace grounds. That is what makes up the boundary, the maid adds. Within those boundaries you are safe, but if you were to go beyond them, it's dangerous because there's no way of knowing where and how magical ores are used, Eurenica finishes. She reflects, overall, this is much better treatment than any typical hostage would receive. But I'm still trapped. I can't exactly complain since the source of the problem is my own body's reaction to magic. The maid continues. The king ordered that if you wish to leave the boundary, to inform him immediately. Eurenica perks up, thinking, does that mean he'll come see me himself? She then sighs. Maybe I was just imagining it when I thought he was being weirdly guarded yesterday. Still, I'd like to go beyond the garden. Where should I take you, Your Highness? Before Eurenica can answer, a new voice interjects. I was assigned by the king to escort you wherever you wish to go, Your Highness. And you are? She asks. I am Thierry Schumart, a priest at the Temple of Loris. He introduces himself with a bow. Eurenica's thoughts race. I can't believe this king. He actually assigned a priest to me. Is this his way of saying he doesn't even want to see me? Thierry gives her a brief tour, explaining. The garden we just passed is Verishad Royal Palace's central garden. It was a special place for the late king and queen. Since there is no queen at the moment, the gardener manages the grounds, Eurenica pries. Does the king ever take a walk there? Thierry responds. The king's personal residence is Belcourt Palace, which faces the garden. He walks there frequently and also has tea time with Lady Elodia there. At the mention of Soliae, Eurenica's interest sharpens. Are they betrothed? They are not officially engaged, but there are considerations to make her the next queen. Thierry replies cautiously. Eurenica frowns. So it's not official. Lady Elodia is the one clinging to the king. But Thierry's next words throw her off. In my opinion, they might be engaged before this year passes. Eurenica reels, I'm back at square one. If he's not refusing outright, that means he doesn't dislike her. Does the king have feelings for her? Thierry clarifies. It seems more like he doesn't particularly dislike the idea of the union. Lady Elodia is a great strategic match as his partner. She's to be the next master of the Tower of Magic. Eurenica thinks bitterly. For a weakling like me, Belcourt Palace is basically the final dungeon. How am I supposed to seduce the king if I can't even get close to him? She steels her resolve. Then I'll wait until he comes out here. I have time, and I'll focus on the garden first. From that day forth, Eurenica makes the central garden her base of operations, keeping an eye out for the elusive king. She marches off to the garden, where she spends day after day, waiting. But no matter how long she waits, Eurydion de Belcourt is nowhere to be found. On the fourth day, Thierry approaches her cautiously. Your Highness, Eurenica glares at him. Did you lie to me? Thierry looks perplexed. Lie to you? As a priest serving Loris, I cannot lie, Your Highness, she groans, throwing herself onto a bench in defeat. Then what in the world happened? 4 days wasted. Sob. I'm so tired. Her frustration spills out. Doing absolutely nothing all day long is exhausting too, she cries, clutching her head. She begins to reflect. I thought my condition would only get worse when magic was being used, but that's not true. Just walking on the grounds of Belcourt itself takes its toll on me. If only I could hold Euridion's hand just once, she laments dramatically. Just sitting here, I feel my energy seeping out of me, Thierry gently explains. His Majesty must be busy these days, Your Highness. Usually, he comes out for a walk at least once every 2 days, but work has piled up since his expedition to Livigny. This doesn't reassure Eurenica. In fact, it makes her feel worse. Still feeling sad, she thinks bitterly. Does he just not want to see me? Was I too clingy? Her mind spirals. Was he annoyed with how I'd hang on to him all the time because I wasn't feeling well? She shakes her head, her thoughts growing more absurd by the second. I knew it. All the weird things I did totally made him see me in a bad light. Or maybe I'm just not his type at all. And then it hits her. Eurydion must like sexy and voluptuous women. Almond-shaped fox eyes, ruby-red lips. Someone like Soliae. That's it. That's why he married Soliae in the novel. A dangerous bad romance. The thought sends her into despair. It fits them so well. If I tried to squeeze my way in there, she pictures a dramatic scenario unfolding in her mind. The genre totally changes. Determined to shake off her self-pity, Eurenica stands up. No. Taste can always change, she says to herself. Starting today, I'm your type. But reality sets in again. Is what I'd like to say, but I can't even go into his palace. No, she declares, shaking her fists. Deliberately retreat. No such thing in my vocabulary. If you won't look at me, then I'll make you look at me. Day 5, 2 p.m. Eurenica crouches behind a bush. I think he's not coming out to the garden because he knows I'm waiting for him. Marianne whispers, Your Highness, why are you sitting there? Quiet, Marianne. Eurenica hushes her. Perfect hiding spot. If he doesn't see me, he can't avoid me. She waits in her hiding place. Your impenetrable wall versus my stubbornness. Let's see which one wins. From above, Eurydion watches her antics. If she'd just quietly stay in the garden and leave, it'd be fine. He sighs. But it's already the 5th day. Did she really not anticipate that I'd see her from here? He shakes his head. It's more than obvious that she's hiding and lying in wait. A princess of Livigny wouldn't have any business at my palace unless she was waiting for me. Eurydion had initially ignored her, thinking she'd give up. But no, she's not the type to give up, is she? He reflects, observing her sulking demeanor. It bothers me. She's like a kitten who's lost her mother. I shouldn't let this distract me, and yet, it seems like I'm interested after all. His gaze lingers on her for a moment longer before he quietly admits to himself, interested in her. Eurydion grew up as an only child. His few cousins had earned their titles and left the palace a long time ago. After the late king passed away, Eurydion was the only member of the royal family left in Belcourt Palace. From a young age, he had grown accustomed to peace and quiet. His life was ruled by strict routines, and very few things could disturb him. However, 2 things had recently been testing his patience. First was Livigny's constant impertinence, and second, the more exhausting issue, Soliae Elodia, the woman who proclaimed herself his fiancé. Soliae played her part well, acting as if she adored him. But Eurydion could see through her act. She loves pretending she's the one who knows me best, he thought. Despite her sweet facade, she always felt like a snake waiting for the right moment to stab him in the back. It's probably best to keep her at arm's length, Eurydion mused. If it weren't for the political necessity of keeping the Tower of Magic under his control, he would have cut ties with her long ago. He added, she knows this too. That's why she intentionally shows up, using her beguiling face to try and deceive me. I always need to stay cautious around her. There's definitely something else she's after. The tension with Soliae often disrupted Eurydion's desire for peace. Yet, when he compared Soliae to the Princess of Livovny, it felt strangely different. Despite how Eurenica also disturbed his daily life, he didn't feel annoyed or bothered by her presence. In just 5 days, Princess Eurenica has achieved something Soliae hasn't been able to do in 5 years. She lured me out of my routines. While he acknowledged the princess's charm, Eurenica, oblivious to her success, was struggling with her own battles. I'm eating and sleeping better than ever, yet my energy is low. I feel like the land of Belcourt is squeezing the life out of me. Eurenica tried to piece together the cause of her condition. Was it the magical or imported from Ezekian? Or was it the sheer number of magicians in Belcourt? Or worse, was it Celia's black magic still affecting her body? If this continues, I might not wake up one day, she worried. Despite her worsening state, Eurenica couldn't bring herself to ask for help. I can't demand a maid like Marianne to fetch Eurydion for me. And I can't just barge into the palace either. Frustrated, she shouted internally. I'm about to die here. This is cruel, cold-blooded. I should have known. He's not DeKalb's father for no reason. She started to rationalize her needs. I don't even need him to hold my hand or hug me. Just seeing his face or standing next to him might make me feel better. As if answering her prayers, Eurydion appeared, his voice cutting through her frantic thoughts. Princess. The sound of his voice was like a refreshing breeze washing over her entire body. Eurenica could barely keep herself upright but thought, he's the only thing that can save me from this suffocating land. Desperately, she reached out to him, her body suddenly feeling lighter. Eurenica collapses from exhaustion, her knees giving out. Eurydion steps forward quickly and catches her before she can hit the ground. She leans against his chest, clearly weak but relieved to have support. A soft glow begins to emanate around them, suggesting a magical connection or something unusual. Eurenica's face softens with relief, her tension fading. The scene ends with Eurydion holding her, the surrounding atmosphere calm and still. Eurydion, noticing Eurenica's weakened state, softly calls out, Princess, your condition. Eurenica leans into him, thinking to herself, I can feel my depleted body slowly being re-energized. Desperate, she clutches onto him tightly, mentally pleading, I don't want to let go. If I do, this heaviness I feel from the earth will squeeze me again. She looks up at him, her thoughts racing. I don't know when this man will come back to me again. Eurydion, looking calm but slightly exasperated, comments, You looked like you were entertaining yourself just fine, so I left you alone. Eurenica, utterly appalled, snaps, Did that seriously look like I was entertaining myself? Her eyes widen in disbelief. As Eurydion holds her, Eurenica becomes entranced by his presence. There's a certain scent that surrounds this man. I wish I could take it all in. Then I wouldn't feel sick no matter where I went. I wouldn't feel so tired and weak. Eurydion begins patting her gently on the back, his touch reassuring. Eurenica lets out a small sigh of relief but frowns. If he was going to be this nice to me, why'd he play hard to get like that? And if he wanted to keep up that wall of his, why'd be nice to me now? She grumbles inwardly. It's not fair. Eurydion finally speaks, his voice steady. It seems like you've calmed down. Eurenica panics and quickly wipes her face, thinking, No, I don't want to show him that I'm crying again. I can't let him see me crying all the time like a little kid. Eurydion, leaning slightly closer, says firmly, I need to see your face to see how you're feeling. Turn your head. Flustered, Eurenica hesitates, thinking about how Marianne had worked so hard to brush her hair earlier. Now it's a mess. But maybe I look better than I did before? She awkwardly shifts, trying to compose herself. Eurydion scans her face, his expression unreadable. Eurenica, suddenly feeling lighter, realizes the exhaustion that was pressing down on me just a minute ago has disappeared. Eurydion asks casually, So, have you been really busy? She replies with a pout. Well, a little. A little? He repeats, raising an eyebrow. Her voice rises. A little? If you were a little busier, then you would have totally. She stops herself, catching her breath. Eurydion tilts his head slightly. Totally what? Eurenica flusters, calming herself down. I can't just start griping at him. He's a king. Of course, he'd be occupied with his duties. It's not strange that he's busy. And there's no reason for him to abandon his obligations just to take care of me. She waves it off with a nervous laugh. Never mind. But Eurydion presses. Totally what? She diverts the topic, grumbling. Why has Shumart not been helpful? Her voice grows defensive. He's nothing like you. And it's not like I can latch onto him and drain him of his divinity. I'm not a leech. Eurydion smirks faintly. Then what does that make me? Eurenica's face flushes as she blurts out. You're different. She grabs his hand impulsively. Honestly, all you have to do is hold my hand like this. She reflects inwardly. People say affections grow gradually, like getting caught in a drizzle. One moment you're dry, then suddenly you're soaked. Maybe that's my only chance now. If love at first sight didn't work, I'll just have to rely on that drizzle. Eurydion pulls his hand back slightly and says, If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to talk to Shumart. What else would a priest use his divinity for, besides helping those in need? Eurenica pouts, muttering under her breath, that wall of his is not coming down. She clenches her fists in frustration. But that's not what I mean, dude, she finally says out loud, looking straight at him. Alright, look at me, sire. If I receive the priest's divine energy, I'll be fine. But won't the priest be drained? Eurydion shrugs nonchalantly. Probably, she pleads. But I fully recovered just from standing next to you. So not only does it benefit me, but you're doing a good deed saving a person's life. It's a win-win for two tragic supporting characters. She clasps her hands together and begs. So could you come see me every 2 days or so? Please? I promise I won't bother you or take up too much of your time. Her voice grows more desperate. If I die in a foreign land, I'll come back as a ghost and haunt you. Eurydion sighs. Once every 2 days? I will be very busy for the next few days, princess. Her heart sinks, and she's about to lose hope when he adds. Let's say once every 4 days. Same time, right here, for 30 minutes. I can commit to that much. Eurenica gasps, her eyes wide. You will? Eurydion nods. And even if I can't make it once every 4 days, I'll frequent the garden. Just don't sit in a strange hiding spot like you did today, princess. Her jaw drops as she stares at him. He didn't find me by accident? He knew I was there the whole time? Eurydion smirks faintly. My office windows are quite large, you see. She groans internally. I knew it. He was avoiding me on purpose. And here I thought he was endlessly gracious and kind. Seriously? She clenches her fists, glaring at him in frustration. You're a villain, just like DeKalb, you big meanie king. Eurydion begins with a calm but firm tone, reminding Eurenica about Shumart. I've said it before, he says, his voice carrying a gentle authority. Shumart is a high priest who handles funeral rites. You don't need to feel guilty about receiving divine energy from him. He pauses briefly, glancing at her. If you ever find yourself too weakened, go see him. Eurenica blinks, confused, her head tilting slightly. Listening, for now? She thinks, her internal voice dripping with sarcasm. She narrows her eyes as she processes his words. The more I listen to him talk, the more it feels like he's quietly nagging me, but in a nice way. Still uncertain, she cautiously asks. But a high priest? Eurydion raises an eyebrow. Have you never heard of the name Shumart? I'm sure it's well known even in Livivny. Eurenica flounders, caught off guard. How would I know? Livivny might have more priests than magicians, but that's not saying much. She hesitates, her eyes widening. Wait, why? Eurydion smirks slightly, almost amused. Shumart is the leading candidate to be the next Archbishop of Vereshad. I nominated him myself. Her jaw drops. Ha! He continues nonchalantly. I'm the only one directly in line for the Belcourt throne, and he's one of maybe 5 people on this entire continent with as much divinity as I do. Her internal monologue screams, What? Thierry, so he really is an incredibly high priest. Realization hits her like a lightning bolt. And I made such an important person sit around and chat while drinking tea with me? She clasps her cheeks in horror. Eurydion watches her reaction, his voice softening. I wasn't lying when I said I'd guarantee your safety and comfort. But then she remembers her earlier thoughts about him. Cold-hearted, cruel, insensitive, evil villain's dad. She internally shouts, flustered at the contradiction. His expression shifts into something almost playful. Although, what you said earlier wasn't entirely wrong. Eurenika's eyes widen in surprise. Thank you? She murmurs, almost disbelieving. Eurydion continues unbothered. Meeting for 30 minutes every 4 days isn't much time, but at least it's something. Let's stick to that plan for now. Her thoughts spiral into chaos. Oh, I'm so touched. Just a little while ago, I was crying my eyes out, but this guy is like a walking, talking healing potion. She glances up at him, and her breath catches. Wow, he's so handsome. That face, it's unfair. How am I supposed to seduce someone who could make women fall for him with a single glance? Unable to stop herself, she blurts out. You're really handsome, sire. His eyes narrow slightly. What did I say about that? She immediately corrects herself. I mean, sire! But her mind is already reeling. He must really hate being called dad. Her thoughts drift as she studies him. There's still so much I don't know about him. The things he likes, the things he hates. Where is his line? How far can I go before he pushes back? But then, determination floods her. I need to be careful. Slow. I'll hover around and wait for my chance. Find every weak point in that impenetrable wall of his and attack them one by one. As if sensing her scheming, Euridion's voice cuts through her thoughts. I see you're thinking of something ridiculous again. Her cheeks flush. Not at all, she insists. But inwardly she panics. No, I can't let him reinforce that wall. Please, your majesty, let your guard down. Despite her internal battle, her plan takes shape. She reflects with satisfaction. From that day on, I visited the garden every 4 days. His presence alone melts away my exhaustion. He's like a miracle. Yet, she notices something different about him. He seems more on edge lately. Even his normally calm demeanor can't completely hide it. Is it exhaustion from his duties? Her heart softens as she catches glimpses of him relaxing. That expression, it suits him better than any of his usual seriousness. Breaking the silence, Eurydion asks, Princess. She snaps out of her reverie. Why yes? His voice drops, almost hesitant. Do you think you could write a letter to Livni? Her confusion is evident. A letter? Why? He hesitates before explaining. Your father threatened to demolish Gluckman Road if he didn't receive a handwritten letter from his daughter. The shock on Eurenika's face is palpable. Demolish it? What? Oh my god. Father! Her thoughts spiral into panic. Don't tell me Euridion's been on edge because of Livni? Eurenika's thoughts spiral further as the realization sinks in. It's already been 3 weeks since I was kidnapped. She clasps her hands together, guilt gnawing at her. I was so relieved that Teresa wasn't the one brought here, but I didn't even think to worry about anything else. Her expression softens as she recalls her past. In my real life, my parents passed away when I was young. I don't know much about filial love, but Eurenika, the youngest daughter of the king and queen of Livni, was so deeply loved as the baby of the family. Her imagination kicks into overdrive, picturing her family's reaction. Give me back my baby girl. Yenny! Yenny! Her hands tremble slightly. I can totally see how the royal family would react. They must be frantic. Tears prick her eyes as she berates herself. What's wrong with me? Sure, keeping myself alive is important, but how could I forget about my family? I completely forgot all about Livni. Eurenika reflects on her situation, guilt bubbling up. I really should have thought more about the family I left behind. My father probably thinks I'm locked away in some dark room without water or food. But then, her perspective shifts. To be fair, Eurydion has provided me with dresses, 3 full meals a day, snacks, and a safe place that even reminds me of home. I'm practically living in luxury. But still, guilt. Her thoughts turn to Livni and the family she left behind. I didn't even think about them properly until now. How could I have forgotten? Determined to reassure her father, Eurenika thinks about writing a letter but hesitates. It would be easier if my father could just see me through a magic sphere. Then reality hits. But that wouldn't work. Livni doesn't even have a magic sphere to connect to. Livni is a little bit of a backwater kingdom. Resolving to write a letter, she carefully drafts the contents. I'm doing well, father. The king of Belcourt has not been untoward to me. Please don't worry too much. Is Teresa alright? I hope nothing happened to her, especially with her delivery date approaching. As she's writing, Euridion's calm voice interrupts her. Write whatever you like. I won't check it. Eurenika freezes, her mind racing. Oh really? Maybe I can sneak in a clever hint to stall negotiations about Gluckman Road. But before she can implement her plan, Eurydion adds, "Actually, I'll read it after all." That look on your face made me nervous. Flustered, she sighs inwardly. How does he always see through me? When Eurydion eventually sends the letter without checking it, she feels a mix of relief and regret. If I knew he wasn't going to check, I would have written whatever I wanted. I hate him. Why is he being so mean today? Her thoughts grow more desperate. If my father opens Gluckman Road, Eurydion will send me straight back to Livivny. I can't let that happen. If I go back, I'll die an untimely death within 5 years, and Eurydion will marry a black mage instead. She silently prays, "Father, I hope you can sense what I'm really trying to say in my letter. Please take it as a clue to hold out as long as you can." Eurydion, observing her intently, suddenly speaks. "You're hard to figure out. Do you want to go back to Livivny or stay here?" Eurenica hesitates but sees an opening. If I tell him I like Belcourt better than Livivny, would he let me stay? But Eurydion doesn't seem convinced. Even if you wanted to stay, your body rejects this land. You don't have any real connections here. What good would staying do? Frustrated but determined, Eurenica decides to play it safe. I still have time. I just need to wait for the right opportunity. As they continue talking, she notices something odd. Wait, he said I only had 30 minutes, but it's definitely been much longer. He seems more relaxed than usual today. Cautiously, she asks, "Your Majesty, could I have a little more of your time?" To her surprise, Eurydion responds warmly. "Would you like that?" Flustered, she blurts out. "Hold my hand." Eurydion obliges, sending divine energy through their touch. Eurenica gasps at how effortlessly he does it. Hey, that's cheating. Priests have to go through rituals and effort to pass divine energy, but he can do it so casually through direct contact? Eurydion smirks. I don't have to hold you for long to transfer energy. This way is more efficient. But Princess, it would be wise not to provoke me with careless words. Confused, Eurenica stammers. What do you mean by that? His expression returns to its usual stoicism, leaving her wondering if she imagined his earlier warmth. As he prepares to leave, Eurydion drops a final warning. Just so you know, it's best if you don't leave Beryllia tomorrow. Soliae Elodia will be visiting the royal palace. Eurenica freezes. Soliae Elodia, the black mage? Eurenica hearing the ominous name of Soliae Elodia repeating in her mind, sending shivers down her spine. She sits, visibly distressed, with her thoughts spiraling. Your Highness? Is something bothering you? Mari, her maid, notices her troubled expression and tries to comfort her. Eurenica's internal monologue reveals her turmoil. What should I do? Soliae Elodia is coming to the palace tomorrow. A woman who's capable of using black magic to bury people alive. Mari, unaware of the gravity of the situation, cheerfully suggests. How about you have some warm milk? It should calm you down. Eurenica reluctantly agrees, sipping on the milk. She's right. Drinking something warm did help calm me down. As she drinks, Eurenica's mind races. What does Soliae Elodia want? Does she really love Eurydion? She's supposedly been by his side for a long time. But why would a woman who is so powerful be threatened by little old me? I'm just the princess of a small kingdom. Images of her first meeting with Soliae flashed before her eyes, when Soliae tried to drag her into the underworld. As soon as she saw me, she tried to drag me down. Was it simply jealousy? Eurenica shivers at the memory, the chill palpable. Her thoughts shift. Whether or not she loves Eurydion isn't the point. What's important is that she obviously has a goal. Why would she want to marry a man who's the exact opposite of her? The realization dawns. And if she gets caught plotting anything, she'll be executed. Eurenica's knowledge from the novel resurfaces. DeKalb, you're a monster born of the strongest divine power and the most evil magic. If you want, you can have everything in this world. Even the distant world of the gods beyond the Udeta, she speculates. Maybe her true plan is to see beyond the Udeta, the border between heaven and earth. She dares to gain the world of the gods using black magic? Eurenica continues piecing it together. If she was hoping to attain that through her son, then that explains everything. But that horrible experiment of hers ultimately fails, because in the novel, DeKalb loses his divinity when he learns black magic. Still puzzled, Eurenica ponders. Why would she use her own son to try and obtain the power of both worlds? Is there a hidden goal? She remembers how little Soliae appeared in the novel. Though she made a strong impression every time, she actually doesn't appear a whole lot. Determined, Eurenica resolves to follow Eurydion's advice. Maybe it's best for me to hide out in Beryllia Palace as Eurydion suggested. But then she second-guesses herself. I can't spend the whole time I'm here trying to avoid her. Even if I get sent back to Livigny, I need to make sure those two don't get married. She contemplates her options. Do whatever I can to interrupt whenever they're together. Willingly sacrifice my own body to prove that she's a black magician. Her thought spirals further. Wait, if I use option 1, then it'll immediately bring about option 2. That's right. If I try to get between them, and she kills me with black magic, then Soliae will get caught red-handed. She imagines the outcome. Through my death, Eurydion will avoid an untimely death, and he'll live a long, long life, happily ever after. Eurenica shakes herself out of it. But I can't die. That's a bad ending. I'm doing all of this so I can live. Her resolve strengthens. I'll just act like how I usually do tomorrow. It's not like I was much of a planner to begin with. A life unplanned is one lived with energy and gusto, right? Meanwhile, Eurydion reflects on his decision to limit Celia's visits to the palace. It's been 3 weeks since I last saw Soliae. I can't push back meeting with her any longer. I already limited visits from twice a week to once a week, he sighs, thinking about her role. She's the mage in charge of giving me regular reports on the Tower of Magic. Though I can't trust her, she's still an excellent magician, and she's symbolic of the crown's relationship to the Tower of Magic. His frustration grows. Who knows? If nothing happens, maybe she can be my companion for life. But that means living the rest of my life being wary of my own queen. It's exhausting just thinking about it. He steels himself. I can't let this shake me. I don't want to show any weakness. It's suffocating. I can only imagine how clingy she'll be since I kept her from the palace for 3 weeks. Troubles upon troubles, it truly is. Eurenica peeks outside her window. She spots Eurydion standing tall, looking distracted. She rushes to open the window and teases him. I got you to open it. I thought you'd stay inside Beryllia Palace all day today. Eurydion watches her with a knowing expression. Did I forget to tell her about Soliae visiting? No, I definitely told her. Not that she seems like the type to ever listen to anybody. He shakes his head in amusement. You really are incorrigible, princess, she said. I'm not a predictable woman, you know. Looking at her, Eurydion thinks, for some reason, she looked more delicate today, almost translucent. It was as if she would disappear. Was it because of the white dress? It would be better if she didn't wear white. He raised his and caressed her hair, thinking, it's strange. I felt like I know this princess in front of me even less than I know Soliae. Yet maybe it's because she seems to move so freely, unrestrained. Simply watching her makes me feel just as free, he asked. Yes. But what brings you here despite the obvious danger you're putting yourself in, princess? She hesitated. Well, today, he pressed. What about today? She clasped his hand and said, well, a brief pause. Then, I plan on kidnapping you. And how do you plan on doing that? He asked. She continued, because of the circumstances I'm in. I was hoping you'd cooperate with me. She wriggled slightly, as if testing the waters. She laughed. Would you prefer to allow yourself to be abducted by me or, he asked, or, she added, or would you rather have me bother you all day? He was taken aback for a moment, then asked, what are you unhappy about today to do this? She said, your schedule for today. I'm thinking about thoroughly interrupting it. He wondered, does she really mean that? She continued, you're not engaged to her anyway. So I figure she and I are in the same position. I'll guarantee your safety and comfort. I'm confident I can do that. So will you cooperate? She winked playfully. Though I guess nothing can be done if you decide to take what I said as a threat. He replied, I didn't know. He thinks in his mind, I have about half an hour to an hour until lunch with Soliae. She knows I was particular about punctuality, so she'll arrive exactly on time. I can't help but think about how Soliae dealt with any noblewoman who tried to approach me. She'd spin her web of rumors and involving them in scandals to get rid of them. Though this princess looks like someone who could never be implicated in a scandal, still, even without Soliae directly getting involved, if it even looks like I'm getting close to a princess I abducted from another kingdom, it probably wouldn't look great for me, or for her, she asked, shaking her head playfully. What do you think? Come with me, your majesty. He chuckled. I can't say no. He thought, it's as if she knew I wasn't looking forward to my meeting with Soliae. Eurenica was shocked. Your majesty? Eurydion jumped outside from window and said, go on, tell me, princess. She blinked. What? He asked. What do you plan on doing with me once you abduct me? She was in shock. What? It worked? He pursued on confused while she was in shock. Princess? She thought, did I actually manage to lure him in? She had tried to flirt subtly before, and he had avoided every attempt. Maybe being direct had been the right choice all along. She rolled her eyes slightly, then said, well, first, how about we run away? He's strangely going along with everything today. She extends her hand towards him. He agreed, accepting her hand. Then they walked while Eurenica leads the way. Her mind was jumbled, thinking, he's strangely going along with everything today. Did he decide to humor me? I mean, thanks. If Soliae were to see me stealing Eurydion away, I wondered how she'd respond. She might literally bury me alive with her own 2 hands. I need to get back to Beryllia and lock him up with me for the day. But why did I feel like I was the only one distressed about this situation? She stopped and turned towards him, thinking, I'm doing this so the both of us could live. She pouted, saying, one day, you'll be grateful to me, Your Majesty. He smiled. Perhaps one day I will. There's no telling the future. She felt annoyed, then resolved. We need to hurry and get out of here before Soliae sees us. After that she started walking again, holding his hand. Suddenly Eurydion stopped abruptly, pulling her towards him. He hides behind a tree, avoiding Soliae. She was in the garden looking for something. Eurenica was shocked for a moment, then understands the situation and thinks, what the heck? What's Soliae doing in front of Beryllia Palace? Celia's here, in front of Beryllia Palace? This is literally the worst situation for me. She tried to speak. But he stopped her. He mumbled, this is a problem. Eurenica thinks, if Eurydion leaves me to go to Soliae, that's going to be the real problem. She looked at his face that was watching Soliae and observed something strange. This isn't how people look at someone they're thinking about getting engaged to. What's he looking at? Soliae is the only thing he could see from this vantage point. What is she doing? But it was pointless to struggle, as Eurydion squeezed her tightly. She thinks I can't get out. Actually, it's strange that Soliae would be here to begin with. Any way you cut it, the most logical conclusion is that she's here to see me. As she shivers thinking about it, he whispered to her, Princess. She panicked. What? Her heart raced being so close to him. He asked, would you like to go look at Verishad? She nods back. She said inwardly, I'll go anywhere where Soliae isn't. Meanwhile, Knight Ferric approached. Lady Elodia. She halted and turns to him. Ferric. He walked to her and said, His Majesty has personally ordered that no one can enter here. She replied, Oh dear. Is that so? I'm sorry, I should have been more careful. Soliae thinks in her mind. I didn't know that. He directly made the order himself? Where'd he pick up that girl who rides at the slightest bit of magic? He gave her a whole palace, and either got rid of or blocked anything with even the hint of magic from getting near her. Though I have a feeling she won't last long despite his best efforts. Then she snapped her fingers, thinking, I'll need to nip this in the bud. He's already made it obvious that he's leery of me. It'll be a problem if his heart were to fully turn against me. She said inwardly, Eurydion Belcourt has the strongest and purest of divine powers coursing through him. The only woman he can marry is me. With the snapping of her fingers she pointed something towards the palace in which Eurenica was staying. Ferric then said, No need to apologize to me, my lady. Please return to the main palace. His Majesty is waiting for you. She nods and said, All right, let's go. She said in her mind, following Ferric. Liar, that man measures time down to the exact minute. There's no way he'd show up 10 minutes early and wait. It makes no sense. As she was following him she asked, Was it His Majesty who told you I was here? Ferric flinched and stopped. No. I saw you here, and knowing this area is restricted, decided it was best to warn you, she replied. I see. She thinks in her mind, I'm not detecting anything in particular. Divinity and black magic. The two are opposites, and the only thing that can cancel each other out. Yet paradoxically, they are undetectable to each other. That is why they are able to exist in the same world without much problem. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to detect his presence. But that also means Eurydion wouldn't be able to detect me here. Then, I wonder where my king is watching me from. The path on which she walked, the greenery withered away as to something ominous past. After she left, Eurydion asked Eurenica, Princess, do you have some kind of blood feud with Soliae Elodia? She averted her gaze, thinking, No, I didn't know better is all. I didn't think sticking my tongue out at the most powerful black magician in this world would bring about such severe consequences. He continued, I truly do not understand what this is all about. Eurenica blurted out, I don't have any ulterior motives. I simply wanted to keep you captive today. He was stunned for a moment, then said, I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about Soliae. But what you just said makes me suspicious. She retracted. I misspoke. I just need to shut up and stay still. She looked at her as he was busy thinking. What in the world could he be thinking about? Then he asked, what are you scheming this time? Her heart raced, feeling guilty. Surely, he's talking about Soliae again. After they planned to leave, Eurydion ordered his servant. Looking at him, Eurenica thinks, it's strange how unfeeling he is towards someone he's supposedly considering making his fiancé. I guess Eurydion is a lot more wary of that woman than I thought. Then, does he really wish to show me around the capital city? Or is that just an excuse to get away from Soliae? The latter does seem more plausible. Does this officially make this the getaway sequence? Then she cleared her throat and began. Your Majesty? Are we running away right now? He said. No. You're abducting me. What am I supposed to do with such an inept kidnapper? She was shocked. What? Is he messing with me? Looks like he's trying to evade explaining himself any further. He continued. At this rate, you'll lose me as soon as we walk the streets of the city. She asked, lose what? Then he turned to his servant and said, give me that. The servant brought robes. Eurydion puts the robe on Eurenica. He bundled her up. Every button buttoned, ribbon tied tight. She felt, I'm choking. Then he said, this is much better. She spined around, observing, is there a reason to wrap me up like this from head to toe? I guess it would be dangerous for a pretty girl like me to walk around the streets in an obviously expensive dress. But I'm not the only one who'd stand out. Eurydion would definitely stick out like a sore thumb more than I do, he said. I wonder what you'd like to see the most, princess. The Temple of Loris? The wolf statue in Yuval Plaza? Or maybe the mural that depicts our nation's founding? She said. Oh, the temple. I'd like to go there. Then she snapped. No, wait. But what about you, DeKalb's I mean, Your Majesty, he assured. Oh, you won't lose me so easily. She agreed, that's true. You really stands out in a crowd. She shouted after realizing, wait, no, she thinks. That's not what I meant. Has he lost his mind? He can't walk around in public dressed like that, with that face. I thought we were trying to get away from Soliae, he asked. What's the problem? She said inwardly. There's a lot I want to say, but I don't have the space to list it all here. She flapped the robe and said, you have to wear this too. He hesitated. I don't think that's a good idea, but if you want me to, she said, you have to put the hood up too. After putting it on, she giggled. Hee. All done? He asked. Do you enjoy wrapping things and covering them up? She dead seriously said. No. My tastes lean more toward taking things off, but that doesn't really work in this situation. Also, you're one to talk, Your Majesty. She thinks he's the one who wrapped me up in this robe so only my face peeks out. He then remarked, it's almost scary how naive you are. She asked, startled. What's that supposed to mean? I'm a grown woman. I know lots. He smiled playfully. Yeah, right. Then he grabbed her hand so her heart raced. He said the palace might be quiet, but Verishad itself is a busy city. There's also the Tower of Magic and the Magic or Market. She thought to herself, I've held his hand many times before, but why is my heart pounding like this? He continued, all sorts of magicians and magic practitioners walk the streets too, so make sure you stay by my side. She smiled. Don't worry, I'll stick to you like glue. She thinks in her mind, my plan kinda went off the rails, but this is a way more effective date than what I had planned. I should be proud I managed to make this much progress. As long as I stay with him, nothing bad should happen, and nothing in the world scares me as long as he's beside me. She then said, shall we go, Mr. Hostage? He smiled looking at her. Yes. As they went outside the gates, a knight brought a horse and greeted. Good afternoon, Your Majesty. Eurydion nods to the knight. He then said to the horse, Rud, it's been a while. Hearing that, Eurenica thinks, Rud, that's the horse we rode the whole way to Belcourt. He's not as scary as when I first saw him. I should try to learn how to ride a horse when I have time. It's not a problem now, but there might be a situation where I'll have to escape on horseback on my own. He then turned to her. This way, princess. He lifts her up and puts her on horse. She grasped the horse and said, thank you. Looking down, she thinks, I'm so far up. Yeah, learning horseback riding might still be difficult for me. He gets on horse and said, posture, princess. She straightened up and said, yes, sir. He then said to the knight, take care of everything before I return. And, Raiden, make sure you and the other three follow unnoticed, understood? The knight bowed. Yes, Your Majesty. Eurenica wondered, what? Follow who? Then he pulled horse ropes, pushing it to run. And that's how she finally got to go outside the palace for the first time since she arrived at Belcourt. She was amazed to see the empire. Belcourt's small streets were so different from Livna, the capital of Livni. Just like the roads she had seen on the way here, they reminded her once again of how small and rural Livni truly was. However, she couldn't shake the feeling that people were staring. Murmurs filled the air around her. She wondered, was I imagining things? Suddenly Eurydion tugged her, saying, "Princess, your hood," she asked. "What?" he said. "It's best if you don't take it off. You'll draw attention," she pouted. "I didn't take it off," he said. "I'll let you down soon. You can do your sightseeing then," she thinks. So I wasn't imagining things after all. I didn't particularly like people staring at me. "Yes," she mumbled, slumping slightly in the saddle. He asked, "Who do you think you are, raising your voice at me?" The city bustled around them, lively and full of energy. "Extra, extra! Read all about it!" The chatter of townspeople, the rustling of newspapers, and the sounds of the busy marketplace surrounded them. It had been a long time since she had heard the sounds of other people like this. A little change of pace was nice. She thinks, I'd been too busy worrying about things all on my own. I should enjoy this. We are away from Soliae, and most importantly, I'm with the most trustworthy escort in the whole world. Then they stopped, and he left her back down. She slipped her robe from her head, saying, "Your Majesty." Eurydion pulled it, saying, "Be careful what you call me when we're outside the palace." "Ah," she blinked. "Then how about?" He refused. "No, I don't even want to hear it." "Humph." She crossed her arms. "I can't do anything." "Don't call me anything," he instructed. "You'll be next to me the whole time anyway. Actually, you won't even need to get my attention." She narrowed her eyes. He was so oddly standoffish. Fine then. She was going to call him Your Majesty, just to spite him. "Come on, don't be so immature," she sighed. Then he said, "From this point on, riding a horse will draw too much attention. Besides, walking is better if you want a general look at the city." "That's fine," she said with a nod. "I like walking." The truth was, Eurydion had no obligation to show her around Verishad like this. She felt a little guilty making him walk with her, especially without his usual guards. "I have to inspect the capital anyway," he said as if reading her thoughts. "No need for you to look so down like this." He hesitated before adding, "And there's something I wanted to check in on. Don't let the hood fall off," he reminded her. Sometimes, it was almost like he could read her mind. She hoped what he said was true, though she would be grateful even if he was only saying it to make her feel better. She couldn't figure him out at all. Sometimes he was kind and considerate, but then he would suddenly be cold and distant. He made her let down her guard, only to hit the wall he had built around himself. And yet, how could she not fall for even the smallest bit of kindness when he had a face like that? As her heart raced, she thinks, "First, I need to calm her heart down," she said. "Thank you in advance, Your Majesty. Since today, you'll be my health elixir, my shield," he said. "I just hope I don't lose you." "Pardon?" she asked, looking at him. "No, nothing. As long as you have fun, I'll be satisfied," he said smoothly. Hearing that, she thinks, there he goes again. "You're flirting. Admit it, you're flirting with me," she thought, exasperated. He then extends his hand and said, "Come." He kept messing with her feelings. As her heart raced, she said, "It's all because of that face of yours." "What?" he asked, puzzled. She said, "I'm saying you're seriously handsome, Your Majesty." He looked completely taken aback. "What in the world are you? Let's go," she said quickly, grabbing his hand. Her heart started beating really fast. Her face turned red. She thinks, what was this? It feels like I shot myself full of caffeine. Did I overdose on his divine energy? She avoided his gaze. She was blushing so much her face was going to explode. Verishad was a large city, with the royal palace at its center. 4 main streets stretched out in different directions from it. To the east and west were the noble estates Phila and Hylan. To the north was Anaxa, where the commoners lived. And to the south, they entered Elijah, the arts district, known as the high streets of Verishad. "Oh, we're here," Eurydion said. "This is considered the second heart of Verishad," he explained as they reached the bustling Elijah Plaza. "Wow," she breathed. "So this is that famous." She was about to dash away, but he grabbed her hand and said, "Don't go off on your own, princess." "Oh yes," she said, returning to his side. He was glancing around, observing. Seeing that, she thinks, something feels off. He looks more on edge than usual. "So you've heard of Elijah Plaza?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes." Or maybe it was just the shadow of his hood giving her that impression. I heard it's a place worth visiting, she explained. It was recommended to me, he asked. By who? She smiled at the memory. You must visit Elijah Plaza, Thierry had told her excitedly. It's the fruit of centuries of Belcourt culture and arts coming together in one place, she said. Thierry did. Eurydian's expression was unreadable. I see you two have gotten close, she blinked. Why is that your response? Am I not allowed to make friends? He replied. Of course you can. Wouldn't it be stranger if we didn't get along? She wondered. I spent much more time with Thierry and Marianne than I have with Eurydian, after all. Then, he asked, does Thierry Chimard allow you to call him by his name? She frowned. Wait, are you jealous? He was at a loss for words. He said. Who? Me? Jealous of you? She said. Don't look at me like I'm talking absolute nonsense. You're hurting my feelings. And yes, Thierry and I have gotten to know each other, so of course, we're on a first-name basis. He said it's fine if I call him Thierry. She thinks, though that's only because we came to a compromise after I kept calling him by his proper title. Marianne had a similar experience, Eurydian said. Yes, well, if you mutually agreed to do so. But surely you're not allowing him to call you by your name, she hesitated. Yes. Well, I am royalty after all, he replied thoughtfully. I see. He looked a little disappointed, seeing that she thinks in her mind. Huh? What? Would you like to call me by my name? What is it? She asked. What is he so unhappy about? He asked. What? She said. Urena Navica. It's kind of a long name, so people shorten it however they like. Urenica, Yenica, Yeni. Any one of those three are fine by me. Those are pet names that only my family uses, so I'm making a special exception for you, Your Majesty. Hearing that, he thinks, it looks like she has no idea that in Belcourt, names are only used between extremely close people, and that shortening names to make nicknames is never done. Though the real issue is, I doubt she'd care even if I explained this to her. She's not really the type to be cautious around people. He spoke. There's still a lot that you don't know about Belcourt, Princess, she asked, confused. Like what? He replied. I'm saying that I refuse to call you any of those names. Anyway, do you remember what I told you before? She pewed, thinking. That's not the reaction I wanted, she asked. What was that? He sighed. You leave me no choice. I suppose I'll just have to be vigilant for you. She was confused. What's that supposed to mean? He keeps saying things I can't understand. Then the realization hit her. Oh no. Does he not like the fact that I'm friendly with a priest that he puts a lot of trust in? That sounds like his problem, not mine. She frowned. I don't see what's wrong with me and Thierry being friendly. It's your fault for not appearing in the garden often. You were more than happy to make me wait, he clearly replied. I was busy. She felt annoyed. No, that makes me sound like a bored little kid throwing a tantrum because I want him to play with me, she said. I was only joking. I'm grateful that you agreed to be abducted all the way here. It's not like I can nag you to keep me entertained, he replied. Glad you're quick to accept things, she snapped. Seriously? Suddenly she felt a sudden surge of energy behind her. Someone was running and crossed near her. Eurydian guarded her, pulling her close. Careful. The person doesn't stop and a marble rolled back from him. Seeing that, Urenica wondered, a black marble? Did that man drop it? I felt a sharp pain like something just scratched me, but it's gone now. What was that? Due to Eurydian's divine energy, the pain vanished. Coming to her senses, she giggled. I guess he has someplace to be. He was in a rush. Oh, thank you for catching me, he smiled and said. It's times like these that make me glad you're careless, she asked playfully. Haha, are you mocking me? He replied. No. Like I said, I'm relieved, she said. I don't understand how that's supposed to make you feel that way, he said inwardly. It'd only scare her if I told her what it was, he replied. Heh, you don't have to do anything out of character. She was confused. Really, what is it? Did I totally miss something? But I don't notice anything in particular. She glanced around thinking. Then he tapped her forehead and said, Shall we go? She nods back. Looking around, she observed, just as Thierry said, the entirety of Yugal Plaza was like a work of art. You couldn't ignore a single thing, from the tile work on the ground to the howling wolf statue in the large fountain at the center of the plaza. And then there's the mural on the massive wall surrounding the plaza. She ordered 2 grilled skewers at a stall. Unknown to her, another black marble rolled near to her. Eurydian averted her attention, saying, I feel like the cotton candy over there is more fitting for you to eat than what you're holding now, she complained. Are you teasing me again? That's not nice, he pressed. Do you not like your hair? She replied. That's not it, but, she said in her mind. I don't like the idea that Eurydion might compare my hair to Celia's. Shiny, healthy, beautiful hair, she turned while chewing her food. Anyway, I don't want to eat cotton candy. I'm going to eat something else. Another marble rolled to her. Eurydion quickly hides it before her and said, Sure, you can do whatever you like. He crushed another with his foot. Then he looked ahead and she was standing still. He asked, Why? What would you like to eat this time? As she chewed, she said inwardly, What? That question just popped out of his mouth reflexively. Looking at him, she thinks, something seems to be distracting him from the street food we're eating. He then said, Actually, maybe it's better if you hold on to the money. She panicked, thinking, I'm not asking you to buy something from me. She quickly stopped him. That's not it. Don't treat me like a child. She pointed. I wanted to ask about the wolf. It has a cross on its back, he said. What? She said. That statue of a howling wolf. I didn't notice it when we were further away, but now I see there's a cross on its back, he replied. The wolf and the cross are symbols of Belcourt. That's because Loris, the god of peace and prosperity, is known to frequently appear on Earth in the form of a wolf. So the wolf is the symbol of the Belcourt royal family, who descended from Loris. The cross on the wolf's back symbolizes the one in the royal family who inherits most of Loris' divinity. That is, the king, she began. I see. So it symbolizes you, father of… He cut her off. Watch it, she retracted and smiles. So the statue symbolizes you. As he stared at her, she thinks. Finally, he's actually looking at me. He doesn't seem particularly different from how he usually is. Yet, every now and then, I notice he looks like he's on edge. Or am I just imagining that? Then he asked, Why do you keep looking at me like that? She replied. How am I looking at you? He said. You're looking at me like you're trying to figure something out. She replied, No, I'm not. Then he said, That's good. She annoyingly asked, What do you mean, that's good? He said, Because whenever you look at me like that, something unexpected happens. She laughs to herself. Is it imprinted in his brain now that I'm a troublemaker? Then she said, I admit I can behave a bit unpredictably, but I'm being totally serious right now. I feel like I'm being neglected somehow. He shrugged it off. Neglected? That's not fair at all. Well, if that's how you feel, I can't really argue with that. What would you like to see next? She stared at him for a moment, then giggled. I want to go look at that wolf statue up close, he agreed. All right. Looking at him, she thinks, all he can see right now is me. Maybe in this moment, it's as close as I'll get to what I want. He followed her, thinking, I can't let my guard down around her at all. They went close to the statue and Eurenica was amazed. Wow, look, this is the perfect spot for a picture. She pointed with his finger, just like this, with the wolf in view. Click, she blurted, Oh, I guess they don't have cameras here. Looking at her, all playful, Eurydion thinks, she must have been pretty restless, cooped up in the palace. She said, This is so different from Livivny. We don't have a big plaza like this. Our royal palace is small. The houses are small. Even the roads are small. Everything is small. I guess you did get to see that for yourself, huh? Our royal palace is tiny compared to the one in Belcourt. What did you think? He replied. It looked bite-sized, she responded. How rude. Bite-sized? Our palace isn't that small. It's just that Belcourt's is ridiculously large, he replied. Sure, let's go with that. She turned her head. Wow, that was a total turn-off. Then another marble rolled near them. Eurydion was cautious of another boundary stone. Looking at it, he thinks, I've never seen a boundary stone that gives off a swirling dark aura like that. Yet strangely, today I've seen quite a few. I wonder if these are being used for black magic. Then as Eurenica was sightseeing, she said, Let's go over there now. Observing the situation, Eurydion thinks in his mind, boundary stones have one of two uses. Either they're used to trap something inside, or they're used to teleport something trapped in their line of sight. Soliae was in front of Berylia, and as soon as we left the palace, it was like we were being surrounded by boundary stones. And then there were all those magicians who accidentally bumped into us. But this is all speculation. No matter how vigilant I am, there's a limit to what I can detect about magicians. In a similar vein, a magician can't know whether or not I possess divine power because of the negating effects of dark and divine power. And in a crowd like this, it would be even more difficult to pick out. But right now, I have the distinct feeling that we're being pursued. Where is this bad feeling coming from? Then another stone rolled. Looking at it, he smiled. I do have enough evidence to at least determine their intentions. I know which one of us that malicious woman is going after. He grasped her hand tightly. Eurenica turned confused. Your Majesty? He thinks. Who does she think she can abduct? She asked. Why do you have that look on your face again? Huh? He pulled her close, saying, Careful. The stone disappeared behind her. She was still confused. He said, I told you not to call me that in public. You should watch where you're walking. She glanced back, saying, But nothing's there. He changed the topic. Anyway, where did you say you wanted to go? I see over there they have a display of Belcourt's traditional crafts. Would you like to look at that? She gets excited. What's that? Yes. Let's get a closer look, she asked the vendor. This is so pretty. Is this something you wear in your hair? The stall owner said. Yes, miss. Take your hood off, and I'll put it on for you, she excitedly replied. Okay, yay. But Eurydion stopped her. No, don't take it off, he thinks. Her pink hair already stands out, since it's rare in Belcourt, she insisted with sparkly eyes. Just this one time, real quick, he refused. No, she pressed again. Then I have no way of knowing which one looks good on me, he whispered. I'll have all of them sent to Beryllia Palace for you, so no need to take your hood off. The stall owner heard his words. The palace? He said. I'll take them all? Eurenica questioned. Such lavish consumption. Don't you think you're overspending? He nodded. I don't know if you could say I ever overspend anything. I probably have the most money in Belcourt, the owner said. Oh my, thank you. Hearing that, Eurenica said that might be true, but she rolled her eyes and added, Yeah, I guess money is one of those things where what goes around comes around. After hearing that, he thinks, that's not really how the saying goes. What does she think that means? Suddenly she noticed a black marble lying in between the accessories. She wondered, what's that? It looks just like the weird marble I saw rolling around on the ground earlier. Strange coincidence. As the marble glows, she got pulled towards it. As soon as she touched it, she felt pinching pain. She stammered, Huh? Ow, that stings. She turned to Eurydion and said, Your Majesty, there's something wrong with this one. He asked. Which one? She pointed. This stone here. She was confused. What? But I wasn't trying to reach for it, she said. It feels like it's pulling me in. Eurydion quickly stopped her. Don't touch it, princess. He pulled her towards him and said, Looks like somebody forgot these. They're all over the streets. Eurenica was startled. I definitely didn't imagine it this time. His demeanor totally changed. He instantaneously went cold. Eurydion picked up the strange marble. She said, don't touch that. She gets shocked to see that it does nothing to Eurydion. He was totally fine, but her finger was swollen. Eurydion crushed the marble, saying, Such silly tricks. Then he grabbed her hand and applied his divine power. She was thinking, I didn't even touch that strange marble. How'd this happen? After he applied his divine energy, swelling vanished. Then he mumbled, Raiden, Ruglier, Selvier, Illiger. She wondered, that name. I haven't heard those other names, but are they also knights who directly report to Eurydion? She then turned towards the horse, thinking, Rud? Is that man standing next to Rud one of the knights? I see. He's been on guard about something this whole time. He even had 4 knights secretly follow us. She asked, worried, What's happening? He said, We need to get away from this place. She questioned, What? He smirked. I see a lot of rats today. She wondered, Rats? I doubt he's talking about actual rats. She shudders, thinking, No, it couldn't be. Either Soleil followed us. She felt chills down her spine and quickly hugged Eurydion in panic. He asked, What's the meaning of this? As the crowd was bustling around them, she said, This means I like you, Your Majesty. She thinks in her mind, It's probably not a good thing that I keep wanting to depend on him. But maybe it's because my body instinctively knows this is how I can feel better. I'll count to 3, then let go. 1, 2, 3. As she backed away, she felt, now healthy in both body and mind. Then she said, Okay, we can go now. He murmured to himself, Seal off the plaza. Raiden, contact the Tower of Magic. Hearing that, she thinks, his voice sounds so cold. But where are his knights? She glanced around to find them. Then he picked her up and started walking. He said, Didn't you say earlier you wanted to go to the temple? She asked. What? She remembers, the temple. She realized, Hold up. That's not what's important right now. She shouted, Your Majesty, I think that's enough sightseeing. Maybe we can just return to the palace and… He doesn't stop and quickly gets in his horse. Giddy up, she panicked. You're speeding. You're speeding. As they reached the temple, one of the clergy saw the approaching horse and said, Horse riding is not permitted here. What's your name? Tell me who you are and why you're… Eurydion uncovers his head and said, Move. The clergy panicked. Why, Your Majesty? But Your Majesty, Who is that with you? He replied coldly. None of your business. Urenica flinched, thinking, what? I've never heard him talk like this. He sounds so angry. Why is he acting like this? As the priest felt pressured, he was speechless. Then Eurydion said, This is my guest. She is someone who happens to be under Belcourt's protection, he replied. My apologies. I did not mean to be discourteous to an important guest. Then she replied, Thank you, Ak. But Eurydion raced the horse. Later, while getting off, she said, Did you really have to race off like that? I don't know why you're in such a rush, he asked. Are you all right? She replied. Pardon? Yes, I am. He looked worried and said, Is that so? She wondered what's going on. As she gets off the horse, she slumped. He caught her and said, I knew this would happen. He patted her back and said, Take a deep breath and then slowly breathe out, princess. It's not uncommon for people who have never stepped foot on the temple's grounds to feel this way. You'll have to get used to it. She thinks in her mind, It's an overwhelming amount of divine power. I feel like a catfish that lived in the dirtiest riverbed their whole life, and then one day suddenly finds itself dropped into extremely clean water. He said, You'll feel better soon. Breathe. You have to breathe. After a few moments, she felt refreshed and totally fine. She said, Oh, that's strange. Eurydion said, That's because you're feeling pure, unadulterated divinity. Can you walk? She replied, Yes. He slipped the robe from her and said, I'm sure this felt stuffy. She replied, A little. After a slight pause, she said, But now I feel fine. He stared at her, looking worried. She thought, feeling blushed. It's embarrassing how he keeps staring at me so intensely, as if he's examining me from head to toe. She asked, What are you doing, Your Majesty? Then he grabbed her hand and said, Your hand. Looking at it, she said, My hand's all better now from before. She thinks he's not listening. Fine, go ahead and look at it all you want. Then he dropped her hand and said, I should have warned you not to go around touching just anything that you see, she complained. I didn't go around just touching everything. That thing drew me in. It felt like it was begging me to touch it. After hearing that, at first he smiled, then sighed. Yes, I see how that could happen, she asked. You don't believe me, he replied. Of course not. She looks at him, thinking, There's no doubt about it. That is a face that says, Sure, if you say so, I guess. It's like he thinks I'm some 10-year-old kid, he asked. It drew you in, you say? She realized, though he looks like his usual self, something's different. She called out, Your Majesty, he said, Go inside the temple. Princess Thierry should be around at this time of day, so you'll have a familiar face to talk to. She questioned. What? What about you, Your Majesty? He replied. There's something I need to check on. She grasped his arm and complained. But you said you'd be my hostage, she asked. What are you going to go check on? You've been acting strange all day. The way you suddenly said we needed to get out of that alley was strange. And how you kept looking around, like you were checking for someone or something, was also strange. Now, the look on your face, even the look in your eyes. She thought, there's no denying that he's been on high alert ever since we left the palace. Even when he jokingly announced he'd be kidnapped by me, he didn't look this tense. Then, the reason for all of this. She was freaking out inwardly, but she still asked, Your Majesty, are you suspecting? But she stopped there. The word Soliae doesn't come out from her mouth. He replied, I've never seen him look so serious before. She asked, confused, What? He continued, It's a shame you only notice things in moments like these. You're usually quite careless. She glared at him, thinking, I'm trying to be serious here. He continued, I simply noticed a few things while we were out that shouldn't be there. I've decided to patrol the streets to crack down on some unsavory things. It's been a while. For example, that magic ore that you almost touched earlier. There were quite a few, so it's dangerous for you to be out there. And it's probably safer for you to be here at the temple rather than go back to the palace since I won't be there. After hearing that, she resolved, maybe he isn't suspecting Soliae after all? But, I'm sure this is all her doing, but I can't tell him that. I still don't have any proof. I can't carelessly go outside, and I can't come out and say Soliae is a black magician. I don't have any special skills that can help me catch Soliae red-handed either. Someone like me would just get in the way. I'm more help if I step aside and sit still. Meaning, there's nothing that I can do, she said inwardly. This is so frustrating. Then she asked, When will you be back? He replied, By the end of the day, she said. Don't be late, he replied. You have my word, she said while fidgeting. I'm serious. You don't know what's going to happen. If you don't make it back on time, it'll make me nervous, he asked. What exactly is it that I don't know? She smiled nervously, thinking, I dunno. Like, the plot of the original novel? The thing is, nothing's certain in life. What if Soliae changes her mind if things don't go her way? If she can have the son she wants, she might decide to harm Eurydion instead. She spoke. Nothing, just make it back safely. What I mean is, don't get hurt or anything like that. He brushed her hair, saying, I see now that you like to worry over nothing. At first she looked unhappy, then she smiled, thinking, seriously? I wish he'd understand even half of what I was feeling. After he left, she said aloud, he left me alone. He did say Thierry should be around. I guess hanging out with Thierry is better than being all by myself. She turned towards the steps and thinks, the real problem right now is, are there this many steps so you can atone for your sins? She complained, how am I supposed to get all the way up there? She was wearing heeled shoes. As she started going, she thinks, Eurydion will probably return before I make it up these steps. Then someone called from behind, Princess? So she turned, then the person said, oh my, I wondered why His Majesty was looking for me. What are you doing up there? Looking at Thierry, she felt relieved. That staircase is only used when we make an offering to Loris. The altar is located at the top, Thierry explained. Loris walks there, so entrance is forbidden, she said inwardly. Eurydion Belcourt, you forgot to tell me the most important thing. If Thierry hadn't shown up just in time, I would have irreverently set foot on holy ground where Loris descends. Of all the places here, why did Eurydion have to drop me off in front of those steps? Blushing slightly, she turned to Thierry. Oh, but how'd you know I was there? He replied. His Majesty told me so. He did? She frowned. How? He was with me the whole time. Those of us ordained to serve Loris can communicate even if we don't directly speak to each other, Thierry explained. King Eurydion's divine powers are the strongest and purest in this land. Therefore, he can effortlessly communicate with us. She recalled. So he wasn't just mumbling to himself earlier. All those nights must be the holy nights of Loris. Are you feeling better, Your Highness? Thierry asked. Yes, I'm great. She stretched her arms. It's been a long time since I felt this full of energy. Thierry smiled. You probably feel better here than you did at the palace. There's nothing dangerous here for you to be on the lookout for. Unfortunately, there were a lot of areas in the temple restricted from outsiders. I would appreciate it if you'd keep that in mind, Thierry said gently. Of course, I'll be on my best behavior. I promised. She thinks he knows better than anyone that I can't stand being bored. Before I knew he was a nominee for the next archbishop, he had been exclusively my guide at the palace. She hesitated, then sighed. I'm sorry to be such a bother when you're a busy man. Not just today, but also before. I probably was very rude to you, Thierry chuckled. What do you mean? No need to apologize, Your Highness. Truth is, I'm not that busy, she said inwardly. Thierry is so nice. I wish Eurydion could be half as nice as him. She blushed, suddenly thinking of Eurydion. He'd probably tease me if he heard me apologizing like this. Now I'm thinking about him again. Something just didn't feel right. Eurydion tried to act like nothing had happened, but it felt like something definitely did. What if Soliae placed some black magic on the palace I'm staying in? My head ached. Thierry gestured toward a roped-off pathway. Your Highness, this path marked with gold rope leads to the priest's prayer room. Civilians cannot go past this point. The prayer room for outsiders is marked with red rope. It's located right over there. She blinked. What? I see. So the gold rope leads to the prayer room for normal people, and the red rope goes to the priest's prayer room. Got it. But it was opposite. If you go further in, past the prayer room, you'll find a public area for believers, he continued. She looked around, noticing the nobles gathered there. Looks like a lot of nobles visit here. Yes, of course, Thierry said. That's because this is the only place in the capital where one can pray directly to Loris. Class has no meaning in the temple. Commoners and nobles both use the same spaces. Now, if you'll come this way. There are a lot of people here today. She followed him, but she could hear murmuring. One girl said, That pink hair, the one that His Majesty. Other asked, Oh, is she? She tensed, thinking, What? Are they whispering about me? I really didn't like being the center of attention. If DeKalb's father were here, I'd at least hold onto his robe or something. She sighed in relief when Thierry finally led her inside a quiet room. I use this room as my study, he said. I wanted to take you to the worship room, but there are a lot more people here today than I expected. Please come in, she replied. Thank you. She sat down, finally relaxing. He inquired, Would you like some tea? Yes, please, she said quickly. She flaps her hand, thinking. They kept staring at me. I thought they'd stare a hole into my face, Thierry asked. It looks like you went somewhere today, she replied. His Majesty and I went out into the capital today, but something unexpected happened. Thierry raised an eyebrow. You mean, His Majesty accompanied you himself? Yes, well, it somehow happened that way, she trailed off. One thing had led to another. Thierry served her tea and said, when His Majesty contacted me directly, I thought something terrible had happened. I'm relieved to hear you're all right. Nothing really happened, she said, though she wasn't entirely sure. However, it seemed like His Majesty was very concerned about something. Thierry's expression grew thoughtful. I see, she sipped the tea. Oh, this tea is nice. After a slight pause, he said, it seems as if His Majesty really cares for you, Your Highness. PBBT, she choked. Who said that? He replied. Oh no. Nobody really told me anything directly. More like I noticed some things, and people have been talking. She looked worried. Are rumors? Yes. It's simply idle chatter that's been floating around, he admitted. I only overheard the conversations of some nobles recently. I don't know anything for sure myself. She leaned in. So what are the rumors? Thierry hesitated. It just seems like there are rumors, tying you to King Eurydion a little. Her eyes widened. In a good way or a bad way, he replied. I don't think I should be the one to judge that. If they say there's something between those two, that's good. But if they say some strange woman appeared in the palace, then that's bad. Is it the former or the latter? She asked, waving her hand. He hesitated, then recalled the conversation. A noble woman said, I heard His Majesty wanted to teach Livavni a lesson, so he captured their princess and has her locked away in a dungeon. Other replied, What? Not at all. My husband told me he saw the princess around the palace. Another noblewoman had apparently said, I heard the king brought his true bride from Livavni. Someone else had murmured. Another said, If that's the case, I'm all for it. I don't know what this princess is like, but she has to be better than that snake of a woman. He then said, I think it's closer to the former. She grinned. Hee, that's fine then. She felt relief. I don't know who saw or said something to get those rumors going, but this meant the public's behind me. Then she asked, Thierry, do you think there's hope for me? He asked. Pardon? Hope for what? She asked. For things to work out between me and the king. Thierry nearly dropped his tea. What? She began. Thing is, with my body the way it is, I figured remaining close to the king is the best thing for me. Don't worry so much, Your Highness, Thierry reassured her. If things don't work out, you could always just come live here at the temple. She shakes her head. I'm not a member of the clergy or an acolyte. I haven't been born with a single speck of divinity, and in fact I need it like a leech. Besides, a layperson can't use the holy temple as their own personal residence. Don't you think so? He got flustered. That's true, but if you're really having a hard time, you should try talking to the king. No, she said quickly. Honestly, I personally like being close to the king. She smiled. Speaking of, Thierry, could you help me out? I need you to do something so His Majesty will like me. You know better than anyone else that I'm desperate here, Thierry. My life's on the line, she said to herself. Of course, it's not just my life, but Eurydian's too. Thierry hesitated, avoiding her gaze. You really need this. Please, she pleaded. He then said, I don't think you really need my help, but I'll see what I can do, Your Highness. Then let's shake on it, business partner. She grinned, reaching out her hand. She echoed, Be my emissary of love. Deliver my love to him. Thierry took her hand, giving it a firm shake, but then said, But really, Your Highness, I don't think you need my help at all. I'm certain His Majesty cares a lot about you. She blinked. Of course, he has to. I might be a hostage, but I'm still foreign royalty. Thierry smiled. No, I don't mean His Majesty cares about you for that reason. Eurydion cares about me? She murmured, uncertain. I'm not exactly sure what Thierry is basing this on, she said. I can't think of any other reason. Well, I'm sure I told you before that he's not a man who's easy to get close to. Thierry continued. I know that quite well too, she admitted. He is kind, but just when I think I have an in, his walls go up. He's a monarch through and through, but he doesn't seem to have a lot of personal relationships, he said. I've served His Majesty for almost 10 years, and he keeps me at arm's length too. Oh, really? She asked, slightly surprised. He continued. He's the only one directly in line for the throne. Because of that, he's always been bound to duty. He only seems kind and magnanimous because he's used to court affairs and his role as king. I see, she murmured, deep in thought. But perhaps Thierry continued, watching her closely. You're exactly the type of person His Majesty needs. Someone who breaks down his walls and loosens the tension. Someone who can let him relax and be more free. That's why I don't think you particularly need to worry, Your Highness, he said reassuringly. Keep doing what you're doing, and you should be fine. She pondered his words. I don't know if I'm special enough to do all of that. Anyway, Thierry said with a small smile. I'm happy that it seems you had an enjoyable day, she brightened. You're right. I had a lot of fun. I got to explore outside the palace grounds for the first time since I arrived here. I see, he said. Did you get to see Yugal Plaza? She replied, smiling. Yes. It was huge, beautiful, and so lively. Then we went into a side street, she continued, and there was a market. They continued chatting for a long time. After some time, I see, he said again, this time glancing at the time. I need to lead the afternoon prayer, so I have to go. I was going to ask if you wanted to come with me, but you look like you're tired. She laughed awkwardly. I think I'll stay here for a little bit. He stood up and opened the door. All right. Then get some rest, Your Highness. I'll be back in about 2 hours. Yes, see you later, she replied. See you later then, Your Highness. She watched him leave, then gazed at the setting sun. The warmth of the day still lingered, but something felt missing. She squeezed her hands together, trying to pinpoint the feeling. Is it because I missed the warmth I felt holding his hand all day today? Thierry's words replayed in her mind. Anyhow, you might be just the type of person that His Majesty needs. Thierry said I could be someone Eurydian doesn't have to be so tense around. She thought, is Eurydian really that relaxed around me? I can't be sure of that at all. Especially when he throws up his iron walls and thwarts all of my efforts, she sighed. Anyhow, whatever the case, while thinking she leaned on sofa. I wish he'd hurry up and return. Even if the Temple of Loris helps me feel better, at the palace, there's a man who makes me feel like I can breathe just by being around him. I prefer that a lot more. At Yeladeta, the boundary between heaven and earth, someone said to himself. What? Something's not right. There's a strange crumb floating around on earth. More specifically, it's in my temple, an unknown voice whispered. She felt an eerie chill. It's very small and frail, and it feels out of place. The voice hummed thoughtfully. Now I'm curious. Later Urenica opened her eyes. It was night. Her eyes fluttered open. How long was I sleeping? She sat up groggily, rubbing her eyes. What the? She frowned. It's dark. She yawned, stretching. I think I slept for about an hour and a half since Thierry left. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light. He might still be leading prayer. She glanced at the clock. I probably have about another 30 minutes until Thierry comes back. What should I do until then? She looked down at her options. Option 1, wait 30 more minutes. Option 2, go to the prayer room. She nodded to herself. Yeah, I'm at the temple, so I should go see the prayer room. She ruffled her hair, making a face at the mess. Maybe I should just wear it down. She brushed through it with her fingers. Still messy. Then she walked to the garden. She exhaled and stepped into the quiet hall. It's empty. I feel like I've taken the place over. She froze. A strange noise echoed. Her heart pounded. What was that noise? She turned, glancing around. I'm the only one here right now. She shudders. What the heck? Now I'm scared. She swallowed hard. Maybe I heard wrong. She remembered as she walked. The prayer room. Thierry said he'd be in the public prayer room. She strange beep sound continued. Just as she was about to rush forward, a voice called, Hey! Her breath hitched. What? Who is that voice inside me head? A voice echoed inside her head. You! Come over here! Her blood ran cold. Am I going crazy? She laughed to herself. Ha ha ha. I must be hearing things. She cried to herself. Ach! What's going on? She tried to convince herself it was nothing, humming a song to shake off the creeping fear. The sun will come out tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar that tomorrow there'll be, the voice said. I said come here. A chill ran down her spine. Goosebumps erupted on her arms. I wasn't hearing things after all. She started running down the stairs. She said to herself, the red rope leads to the priest's prayer room. The gold one to the public prayer room. The voice added, that's it. Good girl. She squeezed her eyes shut and covered her ears. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. While running, she called out everyone. Thierry, Marie, the Zebia, anyone. Finally she saw the prayer room. She grasped at the door handle, her voice rising in panic. Thierry, there's something evil that dares to lurk in this holy temple. The room was silent. She glanced around and said aloud, No one's here. She gasped. What? Is prayer time already over? I think I came to the wrong place. Then the door locked by itself. The voice in her head said, Where do you think you're going? She freaked out. She grabbed the handle and yanked. No way! It wouldn't budge. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Why is this happening to me? The voice echoed in the head. Geez, you seem like a total cutie. No need to be so shy. Just come over here, child not of this world. Are the children of humans these days all as fearful as you are? My child is so sassy. Who are you? She whispered. Her voice was trembling. I won't harm you, the voice assured her. Come closer, child. I'm curious, that's all. Urenica looked around, but she saw nothing. She thinks, I must look like an idiot, talking to nothing at all. But the voice, it's coming directly into my head. She swallowed hard. If you're a ghost, go away. If you're human, say something, the voice replied. A ghost? You should watch what you say, little one. If you won't come to me, I'll go to you. Though it'll be a lot less scary if you come first. Humph. Who said I was scared? She forced myself to sound braver than she felt. Sir? Ma'am? I'm coming. I'll come, okay? Sir or ma'am? There was something about the energy in the room. It felt pure to Urenica. Unthreatening. Familiar, like Eurydian. She resolved herself, right. This is a temple, a safe space. Nothing evil can enter here. She took a deep breath and walked towards the wolf statue. The voice said, I don't know why it has to be such a production to see your face. Urenica squared her shoulders. I'm not sure who you are, but you're committing a crime. You're holding someone against their will and haven't identified yourself. You're not supposed to do that, the voice replied. I thought you were a scared little thing, but I guess that's not entirely true. Your soul and your body are separated, the voice mused. I haven't seen a child like you before. Where are you from? She flinched, thinking. My soul and my body are separated? That's totally right, she asked while confused. Seriously, who are you? The voice replied. If I told you, you'd be scared. Urenica shudders in fear. I'd be scared. Is this one of Celia's cursed spirits? How dare an unclean spirit make a mockery of the temple? Her voice wavered. Who are you? One of Soliae Elodia's familiars? She stumbled back. The voice asked. What? Who's that? A what with a grudge? She shouted. A zombie who died with a grudge. Go away, evil thing, the voice replied. Hey, I told you to watch what you say. A sharp punch hit her head. Ow, she clutched her head. Why'd you hit me? The voice replied. You'll really regret acting so impertinently to me. Poor child not allowed on this earth. Urenica quickly grabbed the statue to take cover. She thought, they used physical force and threatened me. Maybe it really is the ghost of someone who died unfairly. She glanced around to see. Where are they watching me from? Then the voice said. If you keep holding on to me tightly like that, you're going to make me blush, she screamed. Baking away from the statue. She stumbled back and was about to fall, but she fell to the ground. She was floating, the voice said. Such a clumsy child. But it's cute, she gasped. What in the world is happening? Then the voice said. Oh dear, I need to go now. Hearing that, she shouts. What? I have to go listen to my prayer, the voice said lightly. I mean, I am supposed to be good and merciful after all. Goodbye, child who speaks so rudely. I'm leaving. Good luck with your life. With the sound of whoosh, the voice stopped. Urenica fell to the ground. She groaned in pain, her body frozen in disbelief. She wondered what. You have to go listen to a prayer, she mumbled. But you're not a god, so why would you need to? Then realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. Are you a god? No way. They didn't exactly sound godlike. She shakes her head thinking, no. There's no way a god who never appeared in the original story would suddenly appear now. She complained to herself. Today felt so long, like 4 days instead of 1. Her gaze snapped to the locked door. She said aloud, First, I need to get out. She tried to open the door but couldn't. Nah, no way, she muttered. Hey, at least unlock the door before you go. After a while someone came and unlocked the door. She was looking pale and defeated. When Thierry saw her, he was shocked. Oh my goodness, your highness, why are you coming from that direction? He asked. That's the prayer room for clergy, he added. It's where we hear from Loris. It contains more divine energy and is holier than anywhere else. Are you all right? She replied. I'm fine. But stopped in the middle and asked nervously. Wait, what happens in that prayer room? She thinks in her mind. They hear from who? Thierry replied. Oh, you mean the priest's prayer room? It doesn't happen often, but sometimes we hear Loris's voice in there. After hearing that, Urenica reflected on what had happened earlier. She stammered, No way. Then that was really God. She was stunned and bewildered, still in shock. He asked her, "Your Highness?" She replied, "What in the world have I done?" She remembered all the bad things she said to the voice. She struggled keeping her calm. "Why you try to talk to me like that? How was I supposed to know?" Thierry grasped her arm asking, "Your Highness, where are you going?" My voice came out weak. "Thierry." Then she tried to remain calm and asked, "Thierry, do you hear the voice of Loris often?" He replied, "I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about, but hearing Loris' voice on Earth is something that only happens once every couple of years." He studied her. "Your Highness, did you do something?" She said in her mind while panicking, "I think I did, Thierry. Something definitely bad. I didn't cling to the all-powerful of this world and beg for help. Instead, I watched as my only lifeline slipped away." She spoke worried. "My life is hard as it is." He asked, "Your Highness, please tell me, what happened?" She replied, "The thing is, Thierry." As she was talking, she stopped, feeling a familiar presence. She thinks, "I just felt something similar to the divine energy that fills this temple, but it's strangely different." Then someone called out, "Princess?" She jolted towards the voice, and her expression changed. He was Eurydion, looking at her standing at a distance. She called, "Your Majesty!" He asked, "What are you doing over there?" She asked. "What?" He replied, "Come here." Eurenica started walking towards him, saying, "You don't need to tell me twice. I was going to go over there anyway." She went close to him and giggled. "Since it's nice to see each other again, how about a hug?" She stepped up and embraced him and thinks, "His scent puts my mind at ease." He patted her and said, "I'm glad you're happy to see me, but is this a habit for you or something?" She asked. "What is?" He asked. "Running into the arms of just anybody." She pouted. "What kind of person do you take me for? I'm not unscrupulous like that." Then this excessive welcome, he narrowed his eyes, "must mean you caused trouble again?" She felt busted and thinks, "I hate perceptive people like this." He said, "I wonder what that look on your face means, Princess. I wasn't even gone for that long. Don't tell me you've been going around making a mess again." Feeling guilty, she thinks in her mind, "You see, the thing is, I went in the wrong prayer room. Strangely, I think because I'm a child not of this world, I heard the calling of God." She resolved, "That sounds insane. I can't tell him that." Suddenly Eurydion grabbed her face and said, "Go on, tell me the truth." Her heart raced. How about you let go of me first?" She stammered. "You're too close," he countered. "You're the one who hugged me first," she said inwardly. "Obviously because I wanted to get some of that divine energy before your steel walls went up again." She mumbled, "Nothing happened. I'm not some troublemaking kid." He released her and said, "All right, that's a relief." She gave him a piercing glare. "Were you just messing with me?" Then he looked towards Thierry. So Thierry said, "You're back, Your Majesty." Eurydion asked him, "Yes. Did anything happen, Shamart?" Hearing that, Eurenica gasped. "If he lets Eurydion know that I went into the priest's prayer room, I'm going to be so embarrassed." "Don't tell him, Thierry," he replied. "No, nothing happened at all." She felt relieved. "Phew," she looked proud. "See, told ya." Suddenly someone called, "Oh my, is that His Majesty?" People were coming back from prayer room. Another said, "Do my eyes deceive me, Lady Hisario?" Other replied, "Not at all. I see him clearly with my own eyes too." Hearing them, Eurenica gets nervous. "What? How long have they been watching us?" She froze, stiffened. Eurydion, noticing a change of her demeanor, asked, "What is it, Princess?" She shifted uncomfortably. "There are other people here." He looked towards them and said, "Looks like people leaving the prayer. What about them? Just, you know." She fidgeted and tugged him. "When are we leaving?" she said to herself. "I really don't like unnecessary attention or a lot of people looking at me." After a slight pause, he replied, "Yes, it is getting late. Shall we go now?" Eurenica nods back. She thinks in her mind, "I have the energy, but I don't know if I have the mental capacity. I want to go back and lie down. So tired." She said her farewell to Thierry. "See you later." Both Eurydion and Eurenica walked away. Thierry said, "Good night, Your Majesty. And you too, Your Highness." When they reached to the horse, Eurydion asked her, "But where's your robe?" She tried to remember and said, "I left it in Thierry's room." He asked again, "Where?" She replied, "Thierry's room. I took it off for a bit, but I forgot to grab it." She asked, "Should I go get it?" He replied, "No, it's fine." Then they rose horse under the heavy night sky, blanketed with stars that seemed as though they would fall down to the earth. Instead, they settled into the silence of the night. She fell asleep on the way back while on horse. Eurydion carried her and puts her on her bed. She only remembers the soft blankets on her skin and the kind touch that brushed against her. Elsewhere, in the shadows, Soliai said. So we failed in separating the woman from him. The person standing outside at the edge of the tower replied. His Majesty blocked off the plaza, and even Master Rolf went out there, so, she filled in. I see, the person added. I am sorry, they were too much for us to handle, Soliai replied. I understand, she thinks, with someone who has the most divine power in the world protecting her. I didn't expect them to succeed, she asked. What did Master Rolf say? The cloaked person replied. He said there was a limit to how much he can condone, she replied. I see, she said inwardly. That old fool. He thinks he's the one in control. Humph, she then said. You may go now, the person replied. Why yes. Then he left, jumping from one floor to other. He quickly disappeared into the night. She was impressed. They really know how to make a quick getaway. I didn't have to teach them a thing. For those like us, being evasive is necessary. If we're ever caught, it's a death sentence. Then she said aloud. He blocked off the plaza. He shut down all of Yugal Plaza just to investigate a few tiny boundary stones. She thinks in her mind. He never lets down his guard. Suspicion written all over his gentlemanly face. Have his walls finally cracked? That princess, who looks so frail and weak, managed to accomplish this. Not bad. Then someone ominous present there said to her. Why are you hesitating? Just kill her, she replied. I'm not hesitating. There's no need to complicate things by getting my hands dirty. The voice cracked. Coward, she shrugged. Caution, rather. It's the results that matter, not the process. She thinks to herself. Yes, as long as I marry him, as long as I'm able to accept that divine energy into this body, it doesn't matter whether I win his heart or not. All I need is his brilliant blood full of divinity. That body of his contains the purest form of divine power on this earth. There's no greater thrill of the hunt than pursuing him. Of course, I won't give up so easily on that. Then she said, just you wait and see. I'll take good care of it all. I need to make sure this princess slowly withers away. Make it so that she crumbles on her own, the ominous presence said. I shall eat away at her mind. For now, it is night, the time for cursed souls. At night Eurenica found herself in a past dream. What should we do about that child? Whispered one voice among the murmurs. Do you want to take care of her? Another responded quietly. The first replied. You know my situation. I've got 3 kids to support, the other said. You think I don't have a family to take care of? One said. Honestly, at 15, she should be able to take care of herself just fine. We can gather some money and send it to her each month for necessities, someone suggested. Eurenica recalled. It was a very old memory. It was one of those memories I didn't like to think about. It was my father's funeral, and I was 15. I felt their pity. Yet, at the same time, their eyes looked at me as if I were a tiresome burden. I didn't care what they had to say about me, but I would have preferred they said it to my face, not whispered behind my back. Now that I think about it, maybe my aversion to having many eyes on me, and people whispering about me, came from that moment. But that's the only impact my father's death had on me. His death itself didn't hurt me that much. My mother had passed away so long ago that I barely remembered her. And my father was too busy with his love life to be home for even a month at a time. I was always alone, with no one to lean on. Because of that, even my name, Un Su Su, had no meaning to me. Probably because that name was never spoken with any affection. Then she found herself in her classroom, where teacher called, roll call, everyone. She remembered there's that poem too. When I called them by their name, they came to me and became a flower. She wondering, but why am I remembering this now? Again she was at her father's funeral. The people there decided, let's do that. She's got a house to live in. She'll get some money. And she'll be going to school anyway. She'll be fine on her own, one said. It's unfortunate, but hey, what can you do? She thinks. It felt uncomfortable, but it wasn't exactly threatening. What a stupid dream. I should go back to sleep. Then she opened her eyes and thinks, what a strange dream. What was that? I feel like I dreamed about something that happened a long time ago, but I don't remember. I thought I felt strangely damp and uncomfortable. Looks like I broke out into a cold sweat during the night. I feel like someone beat me up in my sleep. Even though I'm now used to waking up weak and listless every morning. She rises up and said, surely I can't be feeling this under the weather just because I went out for a bit. She was feeling aching pain in her body. After that day, her life didn't look all that different from the outside. But if there was one difference she noticed, it was that there were more and more days where she'd fall asleep sitting by the window. Later she found herself sleeping at the window. She smacked herself thinking, Is it the warm weather making me sleepy? Then the voice of Loris again rang in her head. You're quite the lazy one, child, she replied. My name's Urenanovika Sofia Livovny. She thought to herself, when did this voice start talking to me in my head? The voice replied, Yes, child who does not belong. I already know your name. Urenica felt annoyed as the voice was not listening to her. She thought, so this is how Eurydion feels whenever I accidentally call him DeKalb's dad. I'm sorry. I won't do it anymore. She closed the book that was on her lap. Then the voice said, Hey sweetie, are you going to meet him again today? She flopped on table and doesn't reply. The voice said, So you won't answer me now? Urenica thinks in her mind, that flippant tone. Guess this decided to abandon all decorum back in Udetta. My abduction to Belcourt, the strange affliction I now have, even inexplicably earning Celia's suspicions, those were all things I could understand. But this sudden appearance by the god Loris? She looked at the book and continued, It's silly to say this now, but the coexistence of 3 different planes of existence feels real. Udetta separates the human world from the world of the gods, and Remordera separates the underworld from here. This is actually a universe where the boundaries between the realm of the gods and the underworld all exist. I heard even high priests may hear Loris' voice only once in a lifetime. So why is Loris always trying to talk to me? At the same time, they don't answer any of my questions. Then the voice said, I wonder how a small, inconsequential thing such as you came here. Hearing that, she jolted and questioned, Inconsequential? She felt annoyed. Arg. This god seems a lot more capricious than how people here depict him. That dude, God, probably sees me as a bit of a distraction. She said in her mind, Thierry, run away. This is the god you're serving. Meanwhile, Thierry suddenly jolted. Seeing that, his companion asked, What is it, Archdeacon? He replied, I got the feeling that someone was talking about me. Besides that, everything's business as usual. Since that day, Soleil didn't set foot on palace grounds. That's why it's just been one peaceful spring day after another. Another day the maid checked up on Urenica. She said, You don't look too well these days, Your Highness. Another maid asked. Your Highness, you look so pale. What? Later Thierry also asked. Is something wrong, Princess? If anything is bothering you, feel free to talk to me. After hearing everyone asking about her, she thinks, Am I the only one who thought everything was quiet and peaceful? She replied, showing no fatigue. I'm totally fine. I feel great. I've just had some bad dreams, Marianne said. It's stress, Your Highness. She turned to Thierry. Archdeacon, should we inform His Majesty so he can summon the royal physician? If she's having trouble sleeping, maybe a sleep aid herb would be good too. He gave the maid a serious nod. I was just thinking that myself. I'll speak with His Majesty. Urenica was confused. What? Why should I be stressed about anything? Or is that how it looks? She thinks, lack of magic tolerance. A high-profile hostage. Basically, a princess who is homesick? It's true I had some strange dreams, but otherwise, I don't feel any different. Does it look that bad to other people? Though I have been feeling tired a lot more these days. I feel better when I'm outside, but inside the palace, I'm exhausted. I just want to get under the covers and go to sleep. But it's not like I have a job or anything to keep me busy, so that just seems natural. Actually, it's already been 4 days since the last time I had my regular tea time with Eurydion. She concluded, All right. I know what will get rid of all these pesky symptoms. Time for me to go look for my all-natural cure. Then she went to Eurydion. He asked, looking at her, Are you all right? She was confused. Even you're saying that now, Eurydion said. Sounds like you've talked to other people, she replied. Yes. To the people in Beryllia and Thierry. Everyone seems to be so worried about me lately. She seriously asked. Do I look strange to you? She thought to herself. Am I dying from something? He took an examining look at her and said, Your complexion doesn't look good. You look pale. After a slight pause he mumbled, But I'm sure I got rid of anything that could cause this on that day. After hearing that, Urenica wondered, that day? She remembered Marianne telling her, While you two were out, we reorganized Beryllia Palace. You should be more comfortable now, Your Highness, she thought. Is that what that was about? Eurydion stared at her for a moment, then said, Your hair looks especially dry too, she grumbled. My hair is fine enough as it is. If it's dry too, then we've got a problem. He grabbed her hand and said, But your hair isn't what's important right now, Princess. Are you eating enough? What about sleep? She gets confused. Is he actually concerned? She smirked and asked, Why? Are you worried about me? She giggled as she said that. He replied, What nonsense are you going to say now? She teased. If you're so worried, I think a hug would be nice right about now, he rejected, turning his head. I see you're still as lively as ever though. Seeing his reaction, she said in her mind, so cold. Then she poked him and said, Ah, you caught me. I was trying to appeal to you by appearing frail, he replied. Don't try to wiggle your way out of this, princess. If you're not feeling well, you should tell me right away. She walked to a little distance, then turned and said, I'm fine. Besides, Marianne and Thierry are already worried enough about me. You don't have to do that. He also walked towards her. She continued, Were you able to take care of the nuisance you previously mentioned? He replied. Well, there's more than one nuisance, really, she asked. What about the rats from before? He replied. You don't need to know about that. She pressed again. You said that there was something that shouldn't be out in the streets. What was it? And what were those strange clear marbles? She thinks to herself. Was it really Soleil chasing after us? It was revealed the young acolyte of the Tower of Magic was responsible for those boundary stones. Eurydion recalled the scene. The person begged. Your Majesty, please forgive me, Rolf the Magic Tower Master said. It was negligence on our part at the Tower of Magic. These objects weren't meant to be available so easily. We'll be sure to manage such matters better from now on. 4 more stones were found in Elijah Plaza. Eurydion asked him. Are these really just your regular barrier stones? Rolf replied. Yes. After hearing that, Eurydion thinks in his mind. Am I being paranoid if I assume that Soleil Elodia is behind this? Now, he said to Eurenica. We simply found out that unauthorized magical items were out in the open streets. We searched the entire plaza and retrieved all of the stones, so that's the end of that. We don't need to discuss it further. After getting explanation, she thinks. The fact that they reorganized Beryllia that day, and the way this man is wary of Soleil confirms my suspicions. But even if I want to find out more, he thoroughly cuts me off at any attempt to dig for information. I can't even bring it up, let alone ask any questions. I can't, then she said. Your Majesty, I feel like you should have softened up a bit more by now. Let's get closer to each other. How about we have a deep conversation? After hearing that, he smiled. Get closer, huh? I feel like the distance now is good for the both of us. She stepped closer, saying, But I think it would be better for us if we were closer. She gets up close and said, like this? She said inwardly, Come on, fall for it. Both looked at each other for a moment. Then Eurydion sighed. Sure, do whatever you want. It's not like I can stop you anyway. Hearing that, she thought, what kind of response is that? Then she stepped back, saying, Forget it then. I won't, he replied. To be frank, aren't you keeping things from me too? I feel like we're pretty even there, she said. I'm always honest. He leaned closer, asking, Really? Then tell me what kind of trouble you caused at the temple. Why were you clinging to Thierry for dear life? I know you have no intention of telling me. Her heart raced, and she felt flustered. She said to herself, That face is too ridiculously handsome for my health. She stumbled while her heart was racing. She said, That's cheating. You can't attack me at such a close distance with your face like that. He chuckled. Wouldn't you say this makes us even? Then she thinks, Ugh, seriously? He's totally fine. Meanwhile, I'm the one who flinched first. This is embarrassing. Then he said, So let's stop talking about that day. It's not really an important topic of discussion. She wonders, how is it not important? If Soleil was the reason why you were so anxious that day, then it's my business too. I guess I am keeping more secrets than him. So yes, we are even. Her soul is not from this world. She went into the wrong prayer room, and Loris spoke to her. In fact, Loris is still talking to her, she thought. We're even in a really annoying way. Eurydion interrupted her thought. In fact, I think there are other, more pressing matters that you should pay attention to. He pulls out a letter and showed it to her. For example, this letter that came from Livni. Seeing it, she quickly said, Give it to me. Then they sat down at a table. He said, Read it, and if there's anything referring to the Gluckman Treaty, let me know. Don't leave a single detail out, she replied. Okay. She looked at it. The first page is written by Father. After reading it, she gets shocked. She grasped the letter tightly and said, No way. What is this? Eurydion asked her, showing concern. Princess? She said aloud. No way, he asked. Why? What's wrong? She said. Everything, she recalled. It's been about a month and a half since I arrived in Belcourt. Her due date isn't for a while, but Teresa gave birth to Bridget already? She was born a few weeks earlier than in the original novel. Teresa should have been fine and healthy, without any physical or mental stress. Or was my abduction actually a source of stress? Eurydion again called her Princess. She was still busted in thought on top of that. Fernando. I can't believe it, but he went and knocked someone up. He's getting married next month, and the woman he's about to marry is already 3 months pregnant? Okay, this is the correct course of events for Bridget and Alexio to be the same age. But still, looking at the letter, she thinks the Gluckman Road Treaty would have been resolved in a month or two, but now it seems like it'll remain unresolved, just like in the novel. I thought I really changed the story by getting abducted instead of Teresa. Does this mean that no matter what I do, the birth of the main characters and the basic plotline won't change? Then the third main character. Again she said aloud to Kalb. Eurydion asked her. Who's that? She said in her mind. Your future son. She was feeling heavy pressure from all the events happening. Then Eurydion stood up saying, You must be really unwell. She jolted and said, That's not what's important, he said. It is important. Then he leaned forward and placed his hand on her forehead. He added, Your Highness, do you have any idea how you look right now? She felt flushed and said, It's because I'm in shock, he asked concerned. Why? About what? What's in the letter? She replied. My niece was born, he said. Isn't that something to be happy about? She looked sad. Yes, I should be happy, but, she said inwardly, Bridget, why do you have to be born so early? You're making your aunt nervous. The good thing is the letter says Teresa is in good health. I'm guessing she at least escaped her original fate of a horrible death. She said to Eurydion, I'm concerned because she was born a little early. After a pause she added, I totally went down the wrong path. Now's not the time for me to calculate what I can get out of this or not, but Eurydion doesn't say anything. Then she added, DeKalb's dad. Upon hearing that he said, There you go again calling me. She quickly puts her hand on his mouth and said, You marry me, she said to herself. At this rate, he really might end up marrying Soliae and fathering DeKalb. He frowned, then pushes her hand and said, Princess, I think you're really unwell. I think I'll have to have Beryllia inspected again, she replied. No, your majesty, I'm serious right now, he sighed. You should go get some rest. I'll walk you to Beryllia, so don't worry. Few moments later she was left alone in front of Beryllia Palace. She said aloud, Wow, I can't believe this. Does he really think I'm sick and delirious? While leaving, Eurydion told her, If you're sick, call for the imperial physician. He really escorted her to the door and left her. She said to herself, Wow, he totally shut me down. Suddenly Loris's voice rang in her head. Ha, you're a lot more rash than I thought. She jumped in surprise. Oh my God, please be quiet. I'm mortified, the voice added. I can't help it, it's too funny. You're just too cute. You were so serious that I thought maybe humans propose marriage differently these days. She thinks, maybe I was a little too direct. Then a sudden thought shaked her. Not at all. I know too well that beating around the bush won't work with that man. She remembered the example of her kidnapping him. And who cares if he rejects me a few times? If things really continue according to the original novel, there's barely a year left until DeKalb is conceived. The voice asked, Little one, do you wish to change what has been set? She said in her mind. If by what has been set, you mean the original novel, then of course. However, if I change the course of things by a little, would it really affect the course of the general storyline? Just as Bridget and Alexio's births aren't that far off from the original timeline, DeKalb might be born and learn black magic from Soliae. Even if he doesn't meet Bridget, he might end up killing Eurydion all the same. The voice replied, Cute, stupid child, that's fate. Fate is created by so many connections coming together. Even I can't get involved. Then she said aloud, Be quiet. How can you say that as the god of peace and prosperity? You actually want me to submit to a cruel and tragic fate? The voice asked her. What do you do if I won't submit? How will you accomplish what a god cannot? Especially as one who does not belong in this world? She felt anger. So you're saying a mere side character can't change the original story? But that's if I was really Princess Uranovika. She smirked to the voice. You don't know what you're talking about. I know a lot more than you do, the voice asked intrigued. What do you plan on doing? She stood and brushing her clothes and said, I plan on making your distant descendant mine. If you're not going to help, don't talk to me. She said in her mind, I'm the only one who knows what will happen in this world from this point on. I'm human, but I might know a lot more about fate and connections than the gods who live beyond the Udetta. Later Urenica went inside still talking to the voice. The voice was saying, Little one, you are such a naive and foolish child. I cannot directly get involved with what happens on Earth. That is forbidden by the Udetta and Remordia. Besides, you're also not a child of this Earth. Then the voice asked, Little one, debris on this Earth, do you want my help? She quickly turned, asking, "Are you really going to help me? Really? Why'd you change your mind?" The voice replied. "You said don't talk to you if I won't help you," she asked, confused. "That's it," the voice continued. "I find it quite entertaining to watch you. You're quite the cute little piece of debris." "Alright then. So you plan on making him yours, little one? I can help you as long as I don't directly do anything. At the least, I can tell you where he is and what he's up to. He is the closest thing on this earth in my image, after all." Upon hearing that, Eurenica quickly changed her attitude. She replied, "Okay, I respect and honor you, oh great Loris. Please forgive me for how rude I was previously," the voice said. "Little crumb, at least try to sound a little more sincere," she replied. "I mean it," the voice said. "Yes, then go ahead and try to make him yours, the one with the most divine energy on earth." Meanwhile, Ferric was carrying books that Eurydion ordered him. The books were on topics like boundaries of the world, Udeta and Remordera, of matters that touch darkness, chaos upon the land, the age of the dead. Ferric thinks it was hard to know what he was thinking at times, but these days, I had absolutely no idea what was going on with him. Why did he suddenly want to read books like these? Upon reaching, he knocked the door. Eurydion said, "Enter." He stepped inside, balancing the weight of the tomes in his arms. He said, "I found the books you asked for, Your Majesty. Leave them there," he replied curtly. Ferric obeyed. "Yes, Your Majesty." A pause. Then, he asked, "Did Ezekiel refuse the terms again?" "Yes," Eurydion confirmed. "Now that things are finally settling with Livivny, Ezekiel is causing trouble," Ferric said. "I had no idea they'd announce an increase in tariffs for magical ore. The way they tried to sway Livivny, I wonder if they're trying to bury talks about the passage. It seems they look down on us because we didn't retaliate," Eurydion said. "They're underestimating Belcourt," Eurydion thinks in his mind. The good standing of being a protected nation under the Ryger peace treaty was destroyed with the raid on Livivny. It might be a good idea to just take down Ezekiel too at this point. He let out a deep sigh, brushing a hand through his hair. "You may go now. I'll call you if I need anything else," Ferric complied. "Yes, Your Majesty." As he turned to leave, Eurydion was deep in thought. "Though I don't plan on going to that extreme just yet, for the sake of the Livivny princess." But there was something else that troubled him. The Tower of Magic had been unusually quiet. Someone else had placed the boundary stones in Yugal Plaza, yet there were no threats in Berilia Palace. The entire palace had been inspected in secret without the princess's knowledge, but nothing out of the ordinary had been found. And yet, that only made things more suspicious. Soliae, who would throw a fit if another woman so much as walked past him, had remained silent about the Livivny princess. That day, she had been loitering around Berilia. Based on everything Soliae had done before, it would be normal for her to have interfered in some way. But her hands were strangely clean in all of this. Then, there was that thing. He recalled Eurenica telling, "That thing drew me in," as if begging me to touch it. Reflecting on everything he thinks, until now, I had thought Celia's goal was to become queen to exercise full authority over the Tower of Magic. He then recalled himself asking Rolf, "Is there magic that could enchant people?" "No, Your Majesty," Rolf said firmly. "There are no spells that can control people's minds. Even in all my years of magic, I'm incapable of that," he concluded. If I can't trust what Rolf told me, does that mean I can't trust the Tower of Magic itself? Has an unknown darkness taken root in Belcourt's Tower of Magic? He shook those thought. No, that seems unlikely. What am I thinking? That's impossible. Magical or was simply a rock surrounded by magical power. How could it possibly have any pull on a human being? I shouldn't let what the princess said get to me. It's all nonsense. Then he remembered Eurenica saying, "I'm fine now," he thinks, yet her face was strangely pale. "It bothers me, she looked like she had lost a lot of energy lately. How did it come to this? Since when did I care so much about that princess?" As he was flipping pages of the book, he saw a flower in the middle. Then a sudden ringing broke through his thoughts. "Hey, Dad!" He quickly rose up and opened the window, shouting, "What?" A bright voice chimed. "Wow, looks like I got your attention." This was the best way to get Euridion's attention. Eurenica waved his hand, saying, "Your Majesty, how about you give me some of your time?" After that, Eurydion went down to her and called, "Your Highness," she said eagerly. "I've been waiting for you." Then, without hesitation, "Your Majesty, marry me." So, to cut to the chase, "I'm totally in love with you, ever since I first saw you." "But I don't love you," he replied deadpan. "Don't you think I'm pretty?" she asked. He tilted her head. "I don't know. I'm not so sure. I'm not particularly interested in a loveless marriage. I want to try loving her the best I can. And so, this was how she came to be rejected. In the most direct and cruel way, she let out a scream. Arg. She was mad and complaining to herself. Unbelievable. He's going to try and love Soliae? What in the world is that man thinking? She was practically fuming. I thought he didn't trust that woman. Surely he doesn't mean that. How little does he think of me that he has the gall to tell me that he'll try to love another woman? Rushing forward, Marie asked. Your Highness, what were you thinking? She was shocked. Oh my word, I had no idea you had feelings like that for His Majesty, Marie groaned. Actually, I did expect something like this would happen, but how could you do that with no hesitation? You're foreign royalty. Eurenica felt embarrassed. Does being royalty make any difference? Marie pressed. But what about maintaining your dignity? More importantly, what if Lady Elodia hears about this? Rumors are already spreading within high society. Oh, that's good news, she mused. It's not, Marie shouted, looking pale. You have no idea how bad this is. Lady Elodia is not one to show any mercy. I know that too, she admitted, she said in her mind. In fact, I don't think anyone knows that as well as I do, but she replied cheerfully. Don't worry, Marie. Even if things go wrong, Loris will watch over me. When did I say I'd do that? The voice whispered. She turned to the voice whispering. You said you'd help? Don't tell me you'll just sit there and watch if I get dragged to hell. I told you I cannot get involved in human matters, little crumb. Loris sighed. Especially when it involves magic. You need to find your own way out of this. She trembled. Wow, I feel so relieved that you have my back. She muttered sarcastically. If anything happens, you can come hide at the temple, the voice offered. It is holy ground where those that fear me cannot go. She sighed. Yeah, that's a good plan, I guess. She thought. I have no way to protect myself, so I would just have to avoid Soliae like my life depended on it. But maybe I have a chance since Soliae wasn't allowed to freely enter the palace grounds. At least, there was a time when she had deluded herself into thinking that. Later she found Soliae standing in front of her. A chill ran down her spine. She said inwardly, AGH, what are you doing here? I knew I had a bad feeling about today, and I was told that Eurydion wouldn't be at the palace either. Were the black, withered flowers I saw when I left Beryllia Palace this morning a bad omen? A wave of dizziness hit her. Ugh, that can't be good luck. She began nervously laughing. Aha! Hello. Nice weather we're having, yes? The sky's so clear, too. At that moment lightning rumbled as the weather was cloudy. She said to herself, crap. Stay calm, stay calm. Yes. It is a lovely day. Soliae responded smoothly. I like days like these. It looks like you do too, Your Highness, she said in her mind, crying. No. The day's been going bad from the beginning, and now I'm stuck here, she replied. Yes, it's always a good day, when it rains. She wondered, what kind of nonsense am I babbling right now? Soliae said. You don't look so well, she flinched. I've heard that a lot. She wondered, am I even answering correctly right now? Weird. It's like I can't think straight. Am I losing it? I should be running away. So why am I walking closer to Soliae? Then Soliae said, it looks like you're not getting much sleep these days. After hearing that, Eurenica recalled, the imperial physician said there wasn't anything wrong with me besides my sensitivity to magic. But for the past 2 weeks, I've had to rely on sleeping pills which weren't even that effective. I'd wake up before dawn, soaked in cold sweat. Now, it's a daily event for me to sit in hot baths just to bring my body temperature up. But how does this woman know that I'm having trouble sleeping? Then Soliae stepped up and leaned close to her. She said, are you still being tormented by the souls of the damned? Upon hearing that, she thinks, I'm pretty sure she had said something similar to me before. Her heart raced with fear. No, don't tell me. She's the reason I've been having nightmares lately. I can't let her know that I know she's a black magician. Souls of the damned? She forced a puzzled expression. I'm not sure I understand what you mean, but I'm surprised. I have been having bad dreams lately. How did you know? She thought to herself, if she finds out I've figured out who she really is, I'll be dragged to hell kicking and screaming. I heard you were a powerful magician, she continued, feigning admiration. I guess that's why. She gave her a thumbs up, thinking, please, just think that I'm nothing but an airhead princess. Please. Celia's gaze lingered on her. You seem fine, she replied. Of course I am. A shiver ran down her spine. She thinks, yeah, right. I feel like I might collapse any second. Besides, there's a strange sensation I can't shake off. A prickling feeling. Then a hunch creeped in. I've definitely felt this before. Then Soleil said, I wish for your continued health, your highness. Upon hearing that, Eurenica thinks she doesn't mean that at all. Please, please, go away already. Then Soleil said, well then, and started walking. After she left, Eurenica was standing there. She squeezed her arms close and flopped to the ground. Her hands were trembling. After a brief moment she said aloud, oh wow. Then Laura's voice rang. You should be careful, she replied. I know. She thinks in her mind, I thought Soleil couldn't enter the palace grounds, but I was stupid to think I was safe because of that. Maybe this was all part of her plan. As Soleil left Berilia Palace grounds, she said to herself, that's unexpected. I thought she would have withered away to nothing by now. She smirked. I cast a nightmare spell on her, black magic that calls up the worst memory a person has, amplifying it 100-fold to eat away at the mind. It's a spell that requires not that much magical energy compared to its effectiveness, but if she's sensitive to magic, she should have succumbed by now. In fact, her mind should have broken under the spell a long time ago, but she seems fine. It's quite strange. She tapped her fingers against her arm, considering something. Maybe I should increase the intensity? Her eyes flickered with a dark amusement. Her body is probably like cracked glass. It can't hold on much longer. Her face, and the way she acts, are lovely, so maybe it'll be worth it to cleanse the body entirely and keep it for myself. A slow smile stretched across her lips. Maybe that body is just the thing I need to make Eurydion mine. She sat in the carriage smirking to herself. He might care for her deeply, but I wonder if he would be able to accept a corpse? Her smile widened. Yes, very good. And then the carriage left the palace. Then Eurenica went back to her room. Pacing back and forth, she thinks, yeah, it was stupid of me not to piece it together. Holding Euridion's hand once every 4 days used to be enough. There's no other reason why I'd suddenly feel worse like this. That feeling of being pricked by needles even though I didn't touch anything, and that same strange power that draws me in. Why didn't I immediately think of that? She remembered DeKalb's specialty was black magic that bewitched people. Bewitching? Where else could he have learned that? Those magical ores, and even the grounds around Berilia itself, were all ensorcelled by Celia's black magic. She looked in the mirror, patting her face. Is my body still properly working? What if some part of me that I can't see is rotting away? How pitiful! Laura's voice murmurs. I know I said you were pitiful before, but I didn't think you were this pitiful, though you don't belong here anyway. Simply think of it as an inevitable future happening sooner than expected. Is that supposed to be some kind of consolation? She muttered, asking. The voice added, Child, do you want to continue living on this earth? Gritting her teeth, she glared at the voice. Of course. It's not like I want to die. That's not what I meant, little debris. The voice continues. I know that you are from another world. Do you not wish to return to whence you came? She repeated, whence I came? I barely stay alive in this one. If I go back, I'll end up with an even more pathetic fate. I don't even know how to go back, and my body there is probably already dead. The voice asked. Then, child, do you wish to become a priestess of mine? She wondered, a priestess. I have been watching you, the voice states. That body your soul is wearing now is one blessed by me. Eurenica said, sure, because this body was baptized. The voice continued. Yes, so the only thing that does not belong here is your soul. Your soul is from a world that I have no authority in, so it is impossible for me to bless your soul to give it permission to exist here. However, if I accept you as my priestess, I can give you the power to act in my stead on earth. It might upgrade your existence from debris to a pebble. After hearing that, she thinks, so that means blessing my soul is difficult, but he can impart enough divinity in me so that I can take care of this body. I actually wanted to become a priest of Loris even in my past life. I'll do it, she said quickly. Right now, I'm in. But there is a problem, little one, the voice sighs. If I am to impart my divinity on you to make you a priestess, I must descend upon earth, and I only appear on earth once every 10 years. She nearly choked. Ayak, I might not make it to year 5. What do you mean 10 years? Her maids were listening to her from peeking through the door. They get startled at her sudden confirmation. You won't have to wait 10 years, the voice soothes. The last time was when my descendant became king, so you'll only have to wait 5 years. Eurenica argued. 5 years, 10 years, there's hardly any difference. A maid sniffled after hearing that. Poor Princess Eurenica. Later at night, Eurenica sniffled sitting outside in the garden. What did I expect? I could die today or tomorrow, so it doesn't matter whether I have to wait 5 or 10 years. She tapped the withered flower, sighing. It's spring, you should be in full bloom. Flower, Yet here we are, both withering away, she said in her mind. If only Eurydion were here today, then I could call him immediately for help. Just my luck. Her body was aching. Then a maid approached. Your Highness, she tended to her. You'll catch a cold sitting out here like this. You're already unwell. Let's go inside, she said gently. Eurydion thinks, I don't know if I'm just imagining it, but I still feel that prickling sensation all over me. I really don't want to go back inside. But if I do catch a cold while I'm in this state, I might leave this earth, so I should go in. The maid put her on bed. Then Eurydion said, Oh, Marianne, I'll turn the lights out, she replied. Get some sleep, Your Highness, she said inwardly. I can't sleep. If I do, I'll go through hell in my dreams. She gets off the bed. I just need to stay awake until tomorrow somehow. And once it's light out, I'll march straight to Eurydion to send an SOS. She sat on a chair slapping her face. I just need to stay up for a few hours. A short while later, again she found herself in the dream. As the people were talking to each other on her father's funeral, she wondered, what's happening? Did I fall asleep? I don't remember doing that. I don't even remember closing my eyes. But more importantly, I'm lucid. I guess I was trying so hard not to fall asleep that I'm awake and aware in my dream. She looked around thinking, is this the nightmare that's been bothering me this whole time? How old was I when this happened? This was it. Honestly, I'm sick and tired of it. Why do I have to dream a dream I haven't had since I was in high school? I stopped having this dream when I grad. Then suddenly her mother's ghost started haunting her. She called, Elinsa, Elinsa, where are you going? She gasped seeing her. Mom, her mother shouted. Answer me. Oh, okay. Then, sweetheart, how about you come with? Yes. You go on with your mother. Another voice whispers. Other chimed in. Yes, yes. That's for the best. Her mother kept calling, come with me, Elinsa. I won't leave you alone ever again. Her heart started beating fast. She resolved, don't fall for this. Her heart pounds violently in her chest. She said, wow, what a stupid dream. Don't be fooled by this. As her mother called, come with mommy, sweetie. She pushed her away and started running. As the voices of her mother and other chased her, she covered her ears and kept running. She said, I'm not falling for your crap. I'm going back to my room. She said aloud, Soliae, you're scary. Just cast some kind of spell on me. Why don't you? Instead of hiding behind dreams. You think you can get away with this because you're pretty? When am I going to wake up? I don't want to get devoured by some silly dream. Then Eurydion reflection called, Princess, where are you off to in a rush? She was startled for a moment but didn't stop. Then she said, You big meanie, you think I'll fall for this because you're using his voice? Eurydion never calls me Eurydion. You creepy witch. She thinks, I finally get it. What I don't want others to know the most this nightmare is going after my weaknesses. The things I hate the most. And especially, what I don't want taken away from me the most. She imagined Eurydion. She called out, DeKalb's dad. Your Majesty, Eurydion. She wondered while running, what in the world could possibly keep you away from the palace all day? I don't understand. It's his voice that I want to hear the most right now. I can call for him all I want, but he won't come to rescue me in my dream. But I can't get out of this dream on my own. Then she saw a bright flash at a distance. She thinks, an exit. It's an exit. I can finally leave this crappy dream. She jumped from the flash and opened her eyes in her room. She gasped, raising her hand up. I'm alive. Her body was looking faded. She thinks, my voice sounds strange. Then she rustled to check, who's in my bed? She saw her body lying on bed. She gets shocked. What's happening? HNH. She saw her body and thinks, this is nuts. I thought my body felt lighter, but it turns out I'm a ghost outside of my own body. She sobbed, what the heck is this? What did I do to deserve this? All I did was stick my tongue out at her. This punishment doesn't fit the crime. Suddenly Loris's voice called. I knew this would happen. She quickly turned to the voice. Loris, the voice continued. What are you doing, little debris? Go back into that body. She asked, go back in? How? The voice said, don't they see? You're a soul without a receptacle. Sometimes a soul ceases to exist, and the body draws in a similar one. That's what happened to you. If you don't go back soon, your body will die, and you'll be cursed to wander as a lost soul. Her body was groaning in pain. She crawled to her and asked, but how? How am I supposed to go back in? She brushed her hand through her body's hair. Before she can process it, her soul is pulled back. She opened her eyes and started coughing. She coughed and gasped. Suddenly back in her body, the voice scoffs. You made it in just fine. I guess this body fits your soul well. She almost cried. Ugh, seriously? I've never had anyone so unreliable watching my back before, the voice said. I showed you the exit. What do you think got you out of that terrible dream? She wailed. Damn, this whole situation is crap. If those lost souls had caught me, or if I had remained a lost soul, I would have died. My body can't take having these nightmares every night. This is ridiculous. I need to get out of this cursed palace right away. She stumbled out, trying to clear her head. As she reached outside, she was humongous flowers in front of her. They were withered. She wondered looking at them. Are these flowers from the one that was dead yesterday? She gets creeped out from them. She started running. No, I can't think about that now. I need to snap out of it. I need to get away. She was sobbing while running. I have to if I don't want to die an untimely death. After running for a while, she reached outside the Barilia Palace. Looking around, she wondered, where am I? I was so desperate to escape that I didn't pay attention to my surroundings. What if I accidentally went past the protective barrier? She then remembered, wait. His Majesty always starts his day training before dawn. That means. She looked at the building. There, at the drill hall. She went inside. Eurydion was there swinging his sword. He looked towards her and gets shocked. Eurenica was crying and sniffling. He called out, Princess? He turned at the sound of her voice, tears already welling up. Your Majesty, she sobbed, barely able to speak. He dropped his sword and quickly strode towards her. She quickly embraced him. Tears were dripping from her face. She sobbed for a while in his embrace. Then he asked, What are you doing here at this time of day? She replied, I had a dream. A dream? He asks. She stammered. The palace. Barilia. There's something wrong with it. He frowns. The palace? What is it? She trembled, squeezing her arms tightly. He said, Wait, Princess. She said no. She thinks, I can't let go of him. If I let go, I might really die. Let me see your face, just for a second, he says gently. She continued thinking, if I separate from him, even for a second, I might not survive, if I let him go. But then Eurydion called out, Eurenica. Her mind raced upon hearing that. Did this man just call me by my name? I won't go anywhere. Just for a second, he reassures her. She exhales shakily as he pats her head. Then after a moment she loosened her grip and stood up. Then he sighed gently. What's going on? He rubbed her face to wipe the tears. She was still crying and wobbles. As Eurydion's divinity started taking effect, she began. Your Majesty, Barilia Palace. There's something wrong with it, he replied. That's why I told them to look everywhere. Then she felt a little relieved. She thinks his divinity, pure and untainted, is seeping into me, she said, tapping him. Your Majesty. As his divinity was calming her down, she grasped his hand and said, How strange. She thinks in her mind, usually, I feel better the moment I touch him, but this time, it's different. Maybe I really was worse off than I thought. With nightmares tormenting me every night, maybe seeing him once every 4 days wasn't enough. It should have been obvious. Something is draining me faster than Eurydion can heal me, and it still is. Her hand started slipping from him, and she started losing consciousness. She wobbled and stumbled backward, thinking, Is it all right for me to faint like this? What if I'm swallowed by nightmares again? She fainted. She heard his voice calling for her. Eurenica. Dear viewers, thank you for watching Flirting with the Villain's Dad. We've reached the end of Season 1. As Eurenica's worst fears are coming to a head, can Eurydion save her? Or will she succumb to nightmares and black magic? To find out, comment down, and I will make next part. Don't forget to subscribe.